it should begin momentarily if everything works out.
I'm refreshing your channel until it comes up. Or I get a notification because I have notifications on.
You have notifications on for me? That's
Yeah,
so sweet. Okay, we're up. It'll take a minute, but we're up.
because I have notifications on.
You have
All right.
notifications on for me?
Business
That's
time.
so sweet. Okay, we're up. All right. Let's kind of just chill, wait for the chat, wait for some people to come over.
Oh, I should tweet this.
Probably. Maybe. Um, but yeah. Cool, we're up. It looks like. Wait, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Um, okay. But yeah. Cool, we're up.
Or unless you're asking
Looks
chat.
like yeah, I wanna make sure that they can hear you is the thing. Wait, can you hear
Oh,
me?
I can hear you.
Um okay. But yeah. Cool, we're up.
Or unless you're asking
Looks
chat.
like yeah, I wanna make sure that they can hear you is the thing.
Chat,
Wait.
can you hear both of us? I can hear you.
Okay. I think they can hear you. I think yeah, I think they can hear you.
Or unless you're asking
Looks
chat.
like
Yeah,
yeah,
we're good.
I wanna make sure that they can hear. Okay, okay. Um, awesome. It looks like people can hear us both. Our levels are good. Um, I think we can just kind of hang out for a minute and like wait for people to come in. I should probably tweet about this too. Um, and yeah, and then we can get started. If anybody has like pre-stream questions for us to answer um, while we're waiting for people to come in, go ahead and leave them in the chat. Yeah. Okay, Milo, how are you feeling?
Sorry, I'm just awkward. I'm like, yeah, waiting for people to come in.
um yeah, this is the part of the stream that gets cut out when I repost it.
Oh, that's good.
Where
I'm
we're just
glad.
like we're just like awkwardly kind of like waiting for people to come in. Like, but yeah, everybody, this is Milo. If y'all don't know who Milo Stewart is, I don't know what to tell you, honestly. Like, why are you here? But so you can we're gonna be talking about pretty extensively about Milo's new video, which you can go check out as the top link in the description. um and if you have seen it, then awesome, we're gonna be discussing it. If you haven't seen it, you can probably still keep up with the conversation, but like, you've got to watch this video. It's a good video. Go give it some love and stuff like that.
Do you want me to do like a 101? Like,
Yeah, we can do like you're I'm gonna let like you can introduce yourself, and then you can like talk about what the video is, and like give a like a little summary, and then we'll be golden. We'll be good. But I think most of the people who are coming into the stream probably know who you are and probably seen the video. I think.
yeah,
I like to think that that's like the case, but
I'm hoping so. Yeah. I mean, and you've very kindly been promoting it. So thank you.
yeah, if my followers haven't seen the video, then like they're not following me, right? Like
There. Yeah. Yeah.
um
Long story short, I was on YouTube in 2016 when everyone hated feminists. I got on the bad side of a bunch of transphobes. I said all white people are racist. People turned me into a meme for like a year. It sucked. Uh, My channel gets bomb disliked. I made a video about it 5 years later.
Yeah, that's pretty much that's a good summary.
I don't know. There's like always like an awkward moment. Like whenever I'm dating someone, there's a point at which like I have to explain like this part of my life because it's just like they can't Google me without finding that. So I've like gotten really good at just giving like a 10-second spiel of like people online hate me. If you Google me,
Yeah.
you just need to be aware of that.
That's so interesting that you mentioned that because I had to do the same thing. When I was dating around, I would be like, "Don't look me up." Like
Oh, you don't want people to see it. You
yeah,
discourage that behavior.
I kind of like I really never knew like when I was like entering queer spaces and like talking to other queer people like if like how much they knew if they knew about it.
Mm.
So like I always kind of discouraged it. There was a point where like I before Calvin Guerra, um, I would like promote my channel like everywhere. Like I was like really in like my yearbook quote my senior year is subscribe to youtube.com/BrennanBeckwith, which is
Oh my
iconic.
God, you were putting yourself out there. Good for
Yeah.
you.
And but then after that I was like, yes, I have a YouTube channel, but like maybe don't look it up.
I
like
feel that.
like or I would just not I would go as long as I could without telling people that I had a channel. Um
Yeah,
but yeah, isn't that so that's so messed up. Like we should be able to like promote ourselves and like talk
yeah,
about ourselves without worrying about like what people will find about us, right?
yeah. I
Which is
mean,
really
I think that
sad.
there was a point of my life where I was, after the harassment started, when I was really afraid for people to look it up. Um, I before then, even I was making content about being queer before I was out to most people in my life, so I never really put it out there. But after the harassment, especially, I was like ashamed of it. But now I'm at a point where I'm like, if someone wants to be a part of my life, they're going to have to be cool with what's out there about me online. And so I say it like very matter of factly. And if people aren't cool with it, they aren't cool with it.
Yeah, I think that's like the only way to go about it. Like there's no way that we can go throughout like our friendships and our relationships without like that coming up. And I think for better or for worse, like it's a part of us now, right? Like there's no way to escape it, unfortunately. Like we just have to kind of this is us,
Yeah.
right? Like it's our baggage, but it's also like it kind of, maybe shaped us as people, right? um I think
But do you ever feel like guilt over if someone wants to associate with you online, who you know in your personal life, that they have to, that they get associated with that? Do you have like feelings about that?
I I think that this is kind of where our experiences differ a little bit. I think because my harassment was like so targeted, and then I also like I not targeted, but it was just such a small group of people who like had very very specific issues with me, that they weren't necessarily going to go and like harass people like that I associated with online. There was a small time where like my Facebook family members like on Facebook were contacted. That was a little scary, but I think for the
Mm-hmm.
most part like I don't I wasn't too worried about like my friends getting the same amount of harassment that I was getting. I also left for an extended period of time in like every significant way, which is something that I don't think that you did necessarily. Um and so like I was able to kind of have like my own private like friendships and like stuff like that. And so I didn't necessarily worry about them associating with me. And also like I don't know, like I wouldn't be friends with somebody who wouldn't want to associate with like my online persona. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah, that's
understand
super interesting.
like I totally understand why you would feel that way. Um
Yeah. I mean, like the fact that your family, you had to think about, the safety risks to them and how that affected your personal life is like something that no one should ever worry about.
Yeah.
But also, I do think a lot about like, would my experiences have been different if I just left and I came back?
Yeah.
So I'm like, maybe a little bit jealous that like, I mean, okay, I don't want to make it seem like you had good experiences at all because like I know
Yeah.
that that came from a place of
Yeah.
like uh like feeling like you couldn't be out and publicly queer because like
Yeah.
that was a great day that was attacked. But I did a lot of embarrassing things on the internet in 2017 because I was like not handling it well.
Yeah. I
So I'm
think
just
like
like,
I think that we had very similar experiences, but we differed in the way that we kind of like I tried to post like a little bit more after Calvin. I think I posted off and on like vlogs and like I did talk about some queer stuff, but it was never with like the same energy as I was doing before Calvin. And then but I think for you like you kind of stayed, like you kind of stayed on the internet and kept fighting the good fight. And I think that that was like really like I don't think that you should regret that or worry about that because I think that we were all kind of at some point looking to you, right? Um, so yeah, I don't know where I'm going with
I think
this.
yeah, it's just like interesting how uh people just people's different coping mechanisms vary and like similar situations people need different things.
Yeah,
And I think that's like an interesting
yeah,
uh you can see that from like looking at our different experiences.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that I mean maybe the something you can draw from this is just like there's no like perfect coping mechanism. There's
yeah,
no like right
yeah.
thing to do.
I think the most important thing to draw from this whole conversation is that like we should never have gone through what we went through. Like
Mm-hmm.
you should never have been put in that situation. Like you were victimized by like I am like by older men essentially. Like you were really put on blast by these men who should have known better. Like at the very least like not attacking a 17-year-old, right? Like
Yeah.
like that in and of itself, it doesn't matter like what you were saying or what you were doing, like the fact that these were like adults targeting a child is just so sad and like disturbing, and you shouldn't
Yeah.
have gone through that. Like nothing you could have done like would have changed that terrible behavior,
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's sorry, go
No, go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna maybe change the topic a little bit that
Yes.
like I think my age was an important part of my experience
Mm-hmm.
because like regardless of the ages of the people responding to me, 17 is just a time when it's hard to be publicly criticized in that way that I was
Oh.
criticized about a lot of things very close to who I feel like I am as a person. And that's the time when like identity formation is happening. That like that sucks. But then also in response to my video, I've gotten some comments being like, and maybe I shouldn't give them attention because they could just be trolls. But people saying, well, no one knew that you were 17. So you're playing the age card for something that people aren't really responsible for.
Mm.
That like I've gotten a lot of comments of people who said they thought that I was in my 20s when I made the video. And I think that's so silly because like looking at back at my videos, I'm
Look
like,
at
I look
you.
like a child.
Literally, we both
I
still
don't
look
know.
really young. So, like, we both looked really young. I think that you looked really young. And it doesn't, like, I think that that's something that we can talk about like creator responsibility. Like, what was the responsibility of those creators with millions of followers to do the most minute research and find out that you're 17? You know,
Yeah.
like, how, like, can we give them that excuse? I don't think we should. Like, I don't think that we should give them the benefit of the doubt that they didn't know. You know,
Hmm.
like, if you're
Yeah,
about
I think
to
it's
put someone on blast like that.
I think maybe these are some of the things that were taken for granted a lot in the earlier days of the internet. That especially being on TikTok for me is making clear of like, oh, actually, a lot of these platforms are becoming an outlet for young people to express
Yeah.
themselves. That, like, it should be normalized of if you're interacting in a way with someone, like you should understand what are the power imbalances there and understand like if you're putting a potentially vulnerable person in a platform that like they should not be in. And
Yeah.
also it's like if you're 30, why do you care that much about what a 17-year-old
Yeah.
says? Like there's bigger things in the
Yeah.
world.
Somebody said in the chat, picking out that they couldn't have known you were 17 feels like a deflection because the real issue was that they were attacking your identity and they shouldn't have been doing that. Like, and I agree. I think that like the biggest issue is that like they were they were really mean. Like they were really mean. Like some of those clips like that you showed in your video like just break my heart. Like so dark and like not just at you but like just like racist in general and like just transphobic and like how can you say those things with such a large audience, like the audacity, like the absolute audacity to say that shit. Like yeah, I don't know how you did it.
I think it's just like so ironic to look at those clips and see how actually very racist and very transphobic so many people were while loudly proclaiming that they're not racist and not transphobic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little
I'm like it.
it's very jarring. Like and that's
Yeah,
oof. Like it's so jarring and it's so frustrating that these people like have such large platforms that they can say what they can say that and people will be like, yeah, you're not racist, of course you're not racist, what do you like, you know, people will follow these people and understand these people and listen to them and believe them, you know. If they say that you're the one attacking them, their audience is going to believe that, right? And so that gets into the question like what is the creator's responsibility when it comes to like making these terrible videos, right?
yeah. It's so hard for me to understand looking at the videos that were uploaded about me and seeing how many views they got and how positive their like to dislike ratios are, that it actually just makes me really scared having to face that awareness that
Yeah.
so many people actually just support this like very violently racist and transphobic content and like they don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah. I think like I think that there's just this huge like insane community that like just lives for that stuff and like supports it, and we can talk about like the radicalization that the YouTube algorithm kind of promotes, but like these creators, not only are they like spouting this hate, but they're being applauded for it, like they're being supported for it, and they're making money off of it, you know.
Yeah, that's like what's so offensive too, because I mean, not that this matters to me because um like I'm a little bit trying to make YouTube into my job, but that hasn't been my goal for a very long time. I've been on this platform not with that in mind. But when I posted that video, I didn't have AdSense on it. I didn't have AdSense on it for like a year. after I posted that video.
Yeah.
But like, I'm sure people made like so much money off of videos about me, and that's what's so angry is that people profited off of this too.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's so
It's
gross.
so dark. It's so dark that like at the same time that these people are making money off of it, queer creators are being demonetized, right?
Oh yeah.
Like,
And when I posted the video that I made, like my expose on this harassment, um, now YouTube has a system. I know you know this, but for the chat who might not know, when you post a video on YouTube now, you can self-disclose if there's content in your video that is not advertiser friendly.
yeah.
And so I self-disclosed that the video that I posted had uh, like hate speech in it as a documentary, like for the purpose of being like a documentary, essentially. Is like what it's called in the the blurb that you select on YouTube. Because I'm like, I was so afraid that this video was going to get taken down for harassment because I included the clips that I think are harassment and should be taken down. Um, so like now that video that I posted, it has like limited ads on it because
Yeah.
I'm documenting what was said about me,
Yeah.
which is awful.
Yeah. My
'Cause I'm
whole
like none of that should have been on
series,
YouTube ever.
yeah, like my whole series is like demonetized, and I did that on purpose because I didn't want to make money off of like my trauma, but like I think that it would have been demonetized anyway. I think that I looked into it and I think that it would have been um I think that it would have had limited ads because just because we were talking about like these experiences, right? Like, so to
Yeah.
imagine that like these people who did these terrible things like got monetized and made money off of it, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
like I think there's like a whole there was a whole thing that Calvin kind of was like, his video that he made about me was demonetized. And so he was like, I never made any money off of it. But I think the reason it was demonetized was not because of the hate speech in it, but because like he used copyrighted music in it.
Oh.
So like he's out here like
Yeah.
like saying like, oh, I'm so virtuous that like I didn't monetize
Yeah.
that video, but it's like it was never monetized and it wasn't because of hate speech. It was because of
Right.
a, yeah. So like, and that's the kind of thing that like all of these, you know, creators that are saying these terrible things and developing audiences off of those terrible things, like there's a money aspect, like there's a money element, and
Yeah.
there's, you know, if there is an audience that will eat that up, then there's money to be made there.
Yeah.
And who cares what happens to you and I, right?
Yeah.
We're just collateral damage, right? Like they don't even think about us like humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't care.
And like, even though the video that Calvin made about you was demonetized, that's not the only way you can directly profit off of a video
Yeah.
because like how many subscribers did he get from that video? How many people clicked from that video onto another video of his,
Yeah.
driving more views on other videos that might have not
Yeah.
been
What
demonetized?
sponsorships did he get because of that video? Like that was the first video that he made about transgenders,
Yeah.
and then he continued to make videos about transgenders that were
Right.
monetized, you know, because
Yeah.
of the success of that first video. It was
Yeah.
his first video to get 1 million views. It was his first video to get
Right.
2 million views. Like you cannot sit here and tell me that you didn't profit off of that, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
maybe the video was demonetized, but like it led you into your career of hating on
Right.
other queer people, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Especially because when you're negotiating a sponsorship, how much you can ask for is dependent on how many views you get.
Yeah,
So if
and your
you say
past
my
videos.
videos average X amount of views per video, you can ask for more money. And I'm sure that video like was is probably still one of his highest most viewed videos. Like that's driving up his average if it's
Literally.
still public.
Yeah. Yeah.
That video is still public.
It's not. I think it was taken down again. I think that he took it down again. Um
Okay.
I think he did. I think he took it down again, and then he posted his accountability video, and he was like, that was such a mess. what a mess that was. I think I still have a live stream up where I talk about that whole mess. So like we don't have to get into it, but like wow. What a mess.
It was bad.
That was like an hour long video of him like not taking any accountability. Like
Do you ever just like watch someone apologize for something online and you're like, I could have given this apology so much better?
yeah. I
Like
I there's like a general rule where like if taking accountability or like any version of that title is in the title, there's no accountability being taken in that video. Like there's nothing like even remotely close to accountability. That video was a hot mess. I don't even know. Like I thought about doing a reaction to that video on my Patreon, but like I sat down
ooh,
and looked at it and I was like, no. Like this is too much. Like it's too
it would
much
be
to
so
unpack.
long.
Like it would be such a long video. I think that like I think that maybe I'll kind of revisit it in the future when I'm more like emotionally prepared to kind of talk about that stuff.
That's fair.
But yeah, he talked about you in that video a little bit, right?
Yeah, for like 2 seconds to say, he said he only posted the video he made about me because it was like already scheduled. That he like, I think he claimed to like have forgotten what it was about, and he was having some like personal revelation, like talking to Riley Grace Rochon about like changing his behavior, and
Yeah.
then he decided that that wasn't in line with it, so he took it down. But he's never talked to me personally, and
Yeah.
he hasn't ever said sorry for that video. He was just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I don't
It's
want to do
okay.
this anymore or something.
The
But
thing is like you don't want an apology from Calvin. Like he DM'd me an apology after my video because of the, because of the pressure. It was not great. Like it was not great for my feelings. Like
yeah, as much as
um
I'm like, I think I want to use like whether or not a creator has personally talked to someone they have harassed is in my mind indicative of if they are actually taking accountability, like if they recognize that the harm wasn't just uh, like because their viewers got offended, that they actually targeted an individual. That I think it is kind of reflective of that understanding if they try to talk to the person,
yeah.
although maybe that might be performative too. But at the same time, like I
I
also don't
think
have time to hold the hand of every person who's ever harassed me. So if
yeah.
someone messaged me apology, I'd probably be like, okay, thanks.
I think the point where it's performative is when you make an hour long video saying taking accountability and then you talk about the time that you DM'd me in the apologies. Like
Right. And like showing screen caps too, right? I feel like
yeah,
that's
dark.
like a
I
violation of privacy that I never want to do.
Yeah, I actually showed it was really interesting because it he kind of showed his hand that he did not watch my series. He probably just watched the first video because in my third video I do actually show screenshots to kind of demonstrate like what happened there because I
Mhm.
knew that he would also do the same thing. I knew
Yeah,
that he would post it in his video, so I wanted to like have my take. And I was
right.
very like I think I even blurred out his username because he used like an alternate account and I didn't want like
Mm,
I didn't even think that that was public. So I did it as like responsibly as I could. Um
yeah.
but yeah, I don't think that there's like I don't think that there's um a right or wrong way to apologize, but there's definitely like performative apology and there's like a real like genuine apology.
Yeah.
Um
I mean, so many of like what people do when they like quote unquote apologize is like they just, and this, I mean, kind of what Calvin did was he like just explained
yeah.
what happened and
Yeah.
never really said like I'm sorry. And I think like a good apology does like explain, I understand what I did wrong.
Yes.
Here's how I'm going to change my behavior
Yeah.
to not do it in the future.
Yeah. I think that oh yeah. Oh, Mo is in the chat. Hi Mo. I haven't been looking at the chat. But Mo made a good point. Calvin posted screenshots on his Instagram before I even posted
Mm-hmm.
my third video at all. Yeah, I forgot about
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah, so like the conversation was already public. And Calvin
Yeah.
made it public. I didn't even make it public first. Which
That's when
again,
it just becomes a he said, they said.
yeah, literally. Like I don't know. Like I don't know. That was a mess. And honestly, like I kind of I'm in this like perpetual thing where like I want to be super angry and like active and like talk about it, but also part of me kind of wants to just leave it, like move on. Like I don't think he's changing. I don't think that he cares. Like I don't want to waste any more mental energy like talking about him, you know? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm also still really angry. Like I'm also really really angry. So yeah, it's just it's a lot. Right?
That's valid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I understand that like it's just presumably been like a very long process of processing what's happening, because there's also been like so many things that have come up recently for you,
Yeah.
which like sucks to like have something be dragged through the dirt
Yeah.
after you've like already done your process of
Yeah.
healing from it. Like that's kind of my fear, is that like I just really don't want to respond to the responses to the video that I made about surviving anti-SJW to YouTube, because I'm like, I'm done. Like you can have
Yeah.
whatever reactions you want to have to this video, but like
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Like I did this for me. This
Yeah.
isn't for you. So like I'm not responsible for your reactions.
Yeah. I think like I think it's so frustrating cuz like once when we post the video, and I kind of want you to talk a little bit about like your process leading up to the video, because like all of our audience, they just see our videos, right? And that's when
Mm-hmm.
the processing starts for them, when in reality like when we post our videos, our processing has been happening for a long time, like before that. And so once we post our videos, while that it might be the beginning of the conversation for y'all, like it's the end of the conversation for us, you know? Um so I think that there's a lot to be said about that. That being said, do you want to kind of talk about like your process?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Um, like I don't even know where to pinpoint what was the start of it, because I feel like ever since uh, I posted the video about implicit biases and then it had that response, uh, I have always been very frustrated over the fact that I am being quoted over things that I didn't say, or arguments that I didn't make, or incomplete arguments.
Yeah.
And it very much so frustrates me whenever I'm being misrepresented, people are believing false things about me online. Things, I just like want people to just like, if you're upset at something I did, like sure, but like don't be upset at something I didn't do, right?
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
I've like years I've thought about, do I want to make a video to address this? And I
Mhm.
think in my mind that was going to be more just so like defending myself. But I'm kind of glad that I didn't do that, because I don't think that there's any productive way to really do that, without it just falling back into the same type of debates where I'm clearly trying to have more informed discussion than the
Yeah.
people responding to me. Uh, but I think that started changing um, when we started talking, because when you posted your video series on Calvin, we talked about it a few times before you posted it. And so I got to see like some of your process. And I think at the time I felt very much so I was really proud of you for going through that. And I was like, this looks like it took like a lot of emotional work.
Yeah.
But I think I also was kind of doing the mental comparison of uh like kind of like asking myself if I wanted to do the same thing. And in my mind I was feeling like no, I'm past this. So like I've moved on. So this would just be like rehashing something. Um, that's kind of where I was at mentally. And then I think it was more so when I was having conversations with you and other NB trans mask YouTubers who I won't name because I don't know if they want to have me publicly talking about them online, around the use of the language of like trauma,
Mm-hmm.
to describe being dogpiled online, because that was new to me. And I think when I first heard you use that, I felt a little bit resistant to thinking of my experiences in that way. Um, because I think a little bit of me has been resistant to trying to like seeing myself as a victim.
Yeah.
Because I always get the troll response of like you're acting like the victim when you're not, and I've like very much so internalized that in different ways. Um, and so I didn't want to be perceived that way. But like, I mean, like I did have something like very life changing happen to me, and it really sucked.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I had a response that was like that, like I had a few symptoms of PTSD. I'm not
Yeah.
going to say I have PTSD, but like
Yeah.
I've had like some of, I mean, in my video, I talk about having like hypervigilance, paranoia, and stuff. Like that's a real response. Like
Yeah.
it was heavy. And like the thing about trauma is that like it doesn't actually matter how objectively violent the situation was. Like what matters is like how your body responds and how like your mind perceives like threats to your life. um I mean, you're the social work student, so you can probably explain that better than
Yeah.
me.
I
But
no,
like
I
I
mean
think like
like
that.
you said it really well. Like I think that, I so like full disclosure, like Milo and I are friends. Like we talk offline a lot. And we talked when I was creating my video, I reached out to Milo and we started kind of just having a few casual conversations about everything. And yeah, I think that I kind of saw a lot of change in you as I was going through my process. And I think I feel so like honored to be in a position where like I could have, like I really helped you, um, like as I was going through my own process, like I was able to kind of give like a, I don't know, like kind of open the door or like, you know, set a path. Because I think before my video, like there was not, I don't think anybody who had actually been victimized by Calvin or who had actually been, experienced this harassment really made a video about it. I think a lot of people were like talking about it and like pointing out the harassment, but they weren't necessarily like victims or like people who had experienced it. And so I think like my role was, I'm so lucky that I was in a place where like I could help y'all. And yeah, like we
Yeah,
talk to other non-binary creators, queer creators, and I think that we've been able to like build a community out of this, like out of
yeah,
what should never have happened to us, right? But
right, yeah,
has. um and I
yeah.
think,
I
yeah.
the fact that you uh started having that conversation, I think made it so much easier for me to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because like I knew that you got a positive response. And so like I felt like what I was saying then wasn't anything more radical.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, this is like stuff that like is already out there. So
Yeah.
it's like, the people who already hate me are probably still going to hate me. But like, I'm
Yeah.
having this conversation for me because I really had some um, like personal processing that happened very recently. Like people, I got trolls saying like, this was 5 years ago. Why are you still bringing this up? But
Yeah.
like, I'm still doing the work of processing
Yeah.
that. Um, like I think I can like point to two kind of significant uh, things that have happened in that journey. The first is aside from our conversations, but like things that I haven't talked about online slash um, something that I haven't talked about with you either. I know something that like we have shared in common is that like your Instagram DMs and my TikTok comments are full of people apologizing for like hating us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think that happened to me on TikTok because I joined TikTok last summer, and then I think I only blew up because like people, and I didn't blow up, but like the first TikToks that I ever had that got like 100,000 views or whatever. I don't know what's popular on TikTok. I think most people were just like finding it. Slash, I think the algorithm was promoting it because people were like, "Oh, that's Milo Stewart."
Yeah.
And so then people were coming and finding my content and saying like, "Oh, I used to be a part of that anti-SJW crowd. I'm sorry, I had this
Yeah.
reaction to you," um, which I think is interesting because uh, like my channel is small, so I haven't like those people having those personal changes of like going from once like being opposed to me to now being like, I recognize that this is something that you went through. Those are people in my audience. So like I had no idea really that so many people's minds were changing on the topic of non-binary identities or implicit biases or whatever. I didn't know that people's minds were changing so much until I got onto TikTok and I was like, oh, actually people like support this now.
Yeah. Wait,
Yeah,
no,
which
like
is like
I have the same sorry, like I have the same I so like I started talking about trans stuff again on TikTok. TikTok was where I started kind of having the Calvin conversation. Um so yeah, like I totally agree. I think TikTok was kind of the new place for people to find like a safe haven to talk about their identities, because obviously like YouTube was such a volatile place to talk about that for a while. um so I think, yeah, like that's really really cool. I think TikTok's cool. I don't know.
yeah. I think you're much more into it than I am, but I'm like grateful that I had exposure
Yeah.
um to seeing that response.
Yeah.
I think that like that has helped me like unlearn some of the things that I've internalized about like thinking like I was actually in the wrong or like I actually like deserved what happened. Was like
Yeah.
people, if people who were harassing me recognize that they were in the wrong, I can recognize like, oh, this was actually like I didn't deserve this.
Yeah.
um so
Yeah.
that was transformative for me. And it took me like a really long time to script my video because like I think I started on the process after uh, we were having conversations after your video came out. And that's like kind of what inspired me to make this video. But then I really struggled with like, what am I trying to say with this?
Yeah.
Whatever. And like, I hope that I have contributed somewhat to the conversation about like how uh, creative responsibility functions on the platform, or like how actually are trans creators vulnerable to this type of alt-right pipeline, her targeting. But like also I just really personally wanted to document my own experiences, and so through scripting the video I like felt like I like wrapped up like I packaged and put a little bow on like my experiences, and
Yeah.
felt like I did this like processing through writing the script. And I think a lot of that happened because um, at the same time as while I was writing the script, I found a lot of language that describes mindfulness. And I was like, oh, this is something that like I've been practicing, like not really being aware of it, but now I have this language to understand, what actually is this, to me, spiritual practice, and like then using that to understand the harassment that I faced. And that was like, I read the book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which I like feel kind of silly talking about because I feel like this like spiritual woo woo shit or something. But it's, I don't know, it's not like, it's like talks about a type of mysticism that exists across like a lot of religions and like secular spiritual practices too, and like in different types of therapy, like I don't know, whatever. But like it gave me this way to think about trauma, that it describes it as like a pain body that you carry with you, and like form an identity around, and also how having those like really like traumatic life experiences is something that can push people into mindfulness because
Yeah.
like it gets to a point where not being mindful is less tolerable because then you're dealing with all of these, you know, more destructive thoughts in your head if you're not mindful, if you're not living in the present. I don't know how much of what I'm saying is like
No, yeah.
coming across at all because I just feel like
I agree.
I don't know.
I think
I'm
that
talking
like
gibberish.
I think the process of creating our videos and like writing our scripts really allowed us to like like that was a change process, I think, for me too. It's interesting. What did you say? Trauma is like a body we carry with us.
Yeah, yeah. um, I don't know why it's called that. I mean, like the language that you use to describe it isn't really what matters, but I think it's like describing the fact that if you have trauma that you haven't processed, it like lingers with you,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
it feels like a negative thought pattern of
Yeah.
uh, you know, how do I describe this? Uh, okay, so I mean, like something that I would think of, like a thought that I would have in my head while I was like dealing with the harassment was like, I'm never going to be able to escape this. Uh,
Oh
like,
yeah.
I'm always going to be X, X, and X. So like, that's a way that I am like forming my identity around this trauma of thinking like this is a part of me, like like I can visually see it as something that I was carrying with myself, and then that's like a lot of negativity to take with you, and like constantly for me I was constantly worried about like, you know, I meet a new person, will they hate me because like they've seen my videos or something,
Yeah.
and it like it feeds anxiety, it feeds like really always being like anxious about things I said in the past or like anxiously imagining like future conversations. Um, yeah, like feeding that like constant negativity. And I think the more and more I let go of thinking about the harassment as like a part of who I am, the more I can like enter a situation without like having, you know, constantly a part of my mind like worried about that.
Yeah.
While also still recognizing that's not to say that like I don't recognize it as like a trauma that I've been through because it is a trauma that I've been through and like I've dealt with and like I think I'm like strong and capable because I've like went through these things, but it's not who I am as a person. It's
Yeah.
not like the essence of my being,
Yeah.
you know?
I think that there's something to be said about like how we carry what happened, you know, like how we carry the trauma or the experience and like how we allow it to define us moving forward. Um I just want to recognize the people who are sending super chats. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Um, Mikey or Mickey said, "Thank you both for enduring bullying and its after effects long enough to make videos about it." Yeah, you're welcome. I don't know. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the super chats. It seems like I'm ignoring them, but I just want to like I want to have the conversation and but yeah, also Fable said a longtime Milo fan and a new Brennan fan. You're both very rad. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
um
seconding that. Also, I saw a comment. I don't know if this is something that we're able to fix. Someone said that your volume is lower than
Yeah,
mine.
I turned myself up a little bit. I saw that too, but yeah, just let us know if you have like any problems with the volume. I'm watching the chat a little bit so I can kind of adjust things in the background. But I did kind of put us at the same level, but we're both coming obviously both from different like microphones and setups, so it's gonna be a little bit off. But yeah, I tried to fix it. Oh, Ash is
Okay.
here. Hi, Ash. How are you
Hi,
doing?
Ash.
um, yeah. Um, yeah. Trauma. I. I think that like, I don't know. Somebody asked me a while ago, like um, if like I think I changed my physical appearance pretty drastically. I went from like pink and colorful and to like black and red. Like and people ask
Yeah.
me all the time like if that came out of like what Calvin did to me and stuff. Yeah, you're still like colorful and like wonderful and like amazing. But
I didn't mean that to be like, it was a little bit like, oh yeah, colorful. I didn't mean that to be like shady at all. I just think I also like make a joke out of the fact that like we're just opposites on that
yeah,
spectrum. But like, yes, I think I interrupted you while you're making this point about
I
like
think what was
if
the point I
harassment
was
affected
making?
that.
I think the point I was making is that like I don't know. Like I think people have asked like is it because of what Calvin did or is that just like who you are? And the thing is like I've like stopped trying to like distinguish between
Yeah.
like what is just me and what is the trauma that I experienced, right? Like there's no way for me to separate that
Mm-hmm.
because it happened. Like there's no way for me to like look at my life without that having happened to me, right? So what's the point? Also, I
Yeah,
think like
absolutely.
I think that the change is a little bit more drastic for an audience because for me, like it kind of happened over time. Like I've grown, like I was like 18, 19 when that video happened and I'm 23 now. Like things have changed. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
drive when that video came out and I drive now. Like I don't know, like things happen
And your
behind the
identity has
scenes.
kind of shifted too, right?
I think that I think I thought that my identity shifted a lot more than it did. I just recently kind
Mm.
of went back and watched a lot of my old videos to kind of determine if my identity shifted. I think what shifted for the most part is how I express it. Like how I articulate my identity is very different. And is someone calling you? Is someone messaging you?
No, that was my birth control alarm. I'm just gonna,
Whoa, I
I'm gonna,
totally
if
called you
I,
out.
sorry, if I just turn off my camera for a second and like pop a pill,
That's
will that be
fine.
okay?
That's fine.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You
I'm
don't.
still listening to you. I'm just making sure I don't get pregnant.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, let me look at the chat while you do that. I really hope. um, I. Oh. Um. Oh, you're back. Okay. I really hope people's views on non-binary identities are changing. The era of anti-SJW. Yeah, I think that that's happening. I think that as we come out again and like as we start making these videos, like I think that that change is happening. Like I think we're in it now. I think the conversation has definitely shifted significantly. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is that uh, I think people who have been on YouTube for a long time talk about being nostalgic for different periods of YouTube. Like, because like the culture, I hate to think like YouTube is too big of a platform to have a culture, but like there have been niche communities that have changed over time. And I think people who have like lived through those changes like to be nostalgic about them. And I have been making YouTube videos one way or another, like since like 2013 ish. So like I lived through like the big nerd criteria era, like I was here for response videos. I was here for like collab channels, and like I'm a stop. I knew that that was like a good sense of community, but it was
Yeah.
not a good time to be a trans person online unless you
Yeah.
had like a very binary experience. But like I'm really glad to be making YouTube videos like right now.
Yeah.
Like I mean, 2016 sucked, and like I lived through that, but like right now I feel like is a time when we're starting to have a chance minimally, like
Yeah.
a small chance that we might get an audience without being harassed off the
Yes.
platform.
I think like I also think too like this is a time where we're kind of reconnecting with each other. Like I think for a long time like we were kind of going through it alone. I think this is something like you and I have talked about it, and I think we've talked about it with other non-binary queer creators. Like we were all kind of dealing with the harassment like alone, and we kind of lost touch with each other. And I think something really significant that happened is like we started talking to each other again, and we like started like building community with each other again, and started to realize like, hey, wait a second, like we have a lot more power together, like we have a lot more platform together, and now that we're in a place where we can support each other better, like I think that we present a more united front, you know.
Yeah,
um and yeah, like we can post stuff, we can do this live stream with the knowledge that we have some great people behind us, you know.
yeah. I think mm, it's been interesting, like because I think when people had reactions to me, like kind of the only people who were also being targeted at the same time were like Riley Dennis, Francesca Ramsey, like very like feminist YouTubers, that it wasn't as so much into like queerness, like a
Yeah.
little bit. But I think it picked up a lot more like after that. And so like I have seen a lot of people, a lot of creators that I enjoy get targeted.
Yeah.
And I think like my responses to that have changed over time. And I think like that's something that I'm like uh, struggling to understand. I think that there was a time when uh, my experiences with harassment were like something that I was very much so trying to like ignore, and that like that made me feel like I couldn't like, connect to someone over like our shared experiences with it.
Yeah.
Um, that like I didn't want to like relive it mentally by like putting myself out like to have a community around like this shared experience. But like clearly I've done a lot of processing, and like now I think we are getting to a point where like it, it's also more vital to have a community built around that on YouTube. And I like it sucks that like we can relate as a
Yeah.
community on that level, but I'm
Yeah.
glad that we are coming together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's like ultimately the crux of the whole situation is like we should not have become friends because of what happened to us, you know, but I'm glad that we did, you know. um I think that we could have connected and been friends like for a thousand other reasons, but like this is kind of how the cookie crumbled, and like we can't control like what happened to us, all we can do is like move forward and try to like make the best of it and try to use ourselves as an example to hope that it never happens again, right?
Yeah.
Like one thing I like to talk about is that like the reason we talk about our identities and the reason that we're, you know, so open is so that this doesn't happen to other people down the line. Like in the future, hopefully we will make the internet a slightly more bearable place for queer people and non-binary people to express themselves. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's why, you know, it was so important for me, at least me, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think you kind of feel the same way, to come back and to talk about this and like be open about it, um so people can see it, like people can see us, like we weren't chased away from the internet forever. We will come back and call out the people who wronged us, and we're not going anywhere, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, that was good. I'm gonna quote that.
Yeah.
um but yeah. um Somebody said our super chats disabled. I don't think they are. I hope they're not. If you can't super chat, that's okay, don't worry about it. um they were up a second ago, so I don't know. Sometimes YouTube turns it off. I'll go check, but yeah. um Milo, do you have like a Patreon? Speaking of super chats, do you have like a Patreon or like uh PayPal or something?
Oh, I I always feel weird about asking for like financial support, but I am getting to a point where I'm going to try and make YouTube into more of a job. So I'm going to be launching a Patreon soon. Currently, the only way to financially support my work online is that my channel has a feature where you can applaud me. So
Okay.
like if you click on any of my videos, right next to the share button, there's a button that says applaud. And then you can like put in an amount to like donate to me. And I'm super grateful for anyone who like wants to do that. Yeah.
I think I felt weird for a little while about talking about money. Um, but I think like now I'm a little less. Um, I actually had a conversation with Corviday about this. Um,
Mm.
about like it's weird to ask for money to talk like for our videos, but the thing is like we're doing like a lot of work to edit and film and stuff like that, and like I think we're doing a lot of like scripting work and stuff like that, and we're not getting paid otherwise, right? Like we might
Mm-hmm.
get AdSense from a video, but for the most part like the majority of my like payment is from Patreon, um
Mm.
and from super chats and stuff. Like, and I think if people don't want to give us money, like I don't think that they feel pressured to, and I think that if people do want to give us money, they want ways to give us money, you know. You know what I mean? Like I think that there are people
Yeah.
in the world who want to support us, and we should be um you know, willing to receive that because we do a lot of work,
Yeah.
right? Like you do a lot, like you did a
Yeah.
lot of work for that video, right? Like, and it's not, that video that you made isn't even monetized, so like you deserve to like have a Patreon link, you know.
It's limited ads. It has limited ads.
Okay, okay, limited ads.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, like I think that um that's a completely different topic though. Like that's, I have a lot of feelings about monetizing content. um
Yeah, I think it's interesting because clearly I've been doing YouTube for a very long time with it, at its best points being like a part-time
yeah.
job and at other times being like it paid for my Netflix subscription,
Yeah.
like it just fluctuates so much.
Yeah.
And like I do it because I find it rewarding and not
Yeah.
because
Yeah. And I think
it's a
that's like,
job, but also I would love it to be a job if it
yeah.
could be.
I think
But
like if
like,
you want it to be your job, you need to like be able to like ask for money. Like and I think that the internet is so
That's a call
different
out.
now. Like the internet is so different now that like that I think our audience is a little smarter than we give them credit for. I think they know how much work goes into these videos and they want to support us. And if they can support us monetarily, they want to do that. You know? Like, I think that they recognize that we're doing a job. Like, we're doing work, right? And we're not necessarily getting paid by YouTube very much, right, to do that work. So they want to supplement it and they want to support us, right? And I don't think that we should necessarily feel bad about that. But I definitely understand like the first inclination to like feel weird. Like, but I think at some point I just kind of decided like if people like I'm never gonna pressure anybody to give me money. Like I don't think that anybody if you're not in a situation that you can do that, like spend money on anything else before you spend money on me. But like I think my audience is smart. I think they know what they want to do with their money, and if they do want to support me, then like thank you. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, but especially like if you're trying to like make it a full-time career, like your audience wants you to succeed. Your audience wants to see more videos, and they understand that if you know, if you're not being financially compensated for that, you're going to have to focus on other financial things that's going to distract you from making videos. So if they want you to keep making videos at the rate that you are, like they know that they're smart. Like they know how the internet works. They know that, you know, you're going to need to be financially supported through sponsorships and stuff. Like I think that's why people don't mind in video sponsorships as much anymore, because they know that YouTubers need to get paid somehow, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a journey for sure.
We can talk about it more. Like we can talk about it more after this. That's a whole tangent, but like I definitely have a lot of feelings
Yeah.
about it. I don't think that you should worry. Like I don't think that you should feel bad, you know, about
Thank you. Yeah. And also like yeah, grateful for anyone who I'm just grateful for anyone who like says anything remotely positive
yeah.
towards me online ever.
The chat has been really positive. I think for both of us, we're kind of yeah, um I really appreciate all of the nice things that people are saying in the chat, even if we're not like calling people out individually. I think it's so nice. Also, thank you to my mods. I'm so glad my mods are here and like helping out. But yeah, yeah, y'all are great. um, but yeah. What else did you want to? Oh, speaking of monetization, someone just sent another super chat. Thank you so much, Michael. I'm late to the stream, but I wanted to say that I appreciate you both. That you're still online is an inspiration to me, even though I'm 35 and only came out as non-binary last year. It is never
oh my
too
god,
late.
congrats!
Congratulations, you're awesome. Like, it is never too late to come out as non-binary. I know an amazing non-binary person who got their top surgery at 40. Like, I think we're a community, and like we all come to terms with our identities at different places in our lives, and I think that's so good.
Yeah. I love the few chances that I have gotten throughout my life to share community with LGBT folks who are not from my generation.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's like the one thing that's hard about queer identity is that we're not connected through our families like most other marginalized communities are. That then we're often stuck within our age group, and I think that does a lot of disservices because we can learn a lot from each other.
Yeah.
And support each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, good vibes.
I made a whole I think I made like a TikTok or no, a tweet. I tweeted. I tweeted about
You got there.
I tweeted about how like there are so many older non-binary voices and people back when Ariel Scarcella was like, there's no old non-binary people, like you grow out of it. It's like there's literally like a plethora, like so many out non-binary older people that it's like, what is she talking about? Like I think this community is so vast, like far more vast than the internet gives it credit for. Like we've existed longer than YouTube has existed. You know, we've existed longer than Tumblr has existed. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, like not to mention the fact that like non-binary and transgender, like a lot of the ways that we have to describe non-cisnormative gender experiences come out of like a very westernized, colonized context, but that there's other languages to describe similar, albeit like less medicalized experiences across the globe
yeah,
that, you know, have very rich histories.
yeah,
And like I hesitate to like draw that comparison because like not everyone across cultures who identifies as like a third gender also identifies as trans or non-binary. Like
yeah,
those terms aren't equivalent, but like this is just an experience that a lot of humans share, that like we
yeah.
have weird like non our gender experiences can't be put into a binary.
They really can't. And like the thing is, like the this is like all like gender theory, right? But like the idea that like non-binary is the new idea, like the non-binary is the new thing, when in reality like the binary gender is more new, like is more um like I think gender nonconformity and like all of its forms has been around longer than the idea of like male female gender roles, western society's idea of what gender is, right? um so that's that on that. Somebody mentioned Public Universal Friend. I was gonna mention them. That is, I'm gonna do a video on them, honestly. Do you know who Public Universal Friend is?
I like have the picture in my mind because this was like uh they lived like a long time ago and they
They
were
were
like
like a
non-binary. That's what I
okay.
know about them.
Well, what I know about them is like I think they were like a Quaker. Like they were
Oh
um
yeah, the Quakers are cool.
like very much like, I don't know, like 1600s. I'm just throwing that out there. Very long time ago,
Right.
right? And they um they're a really interesting character in history. Like they one day like just they said that they had like a breakdown or like a coma or something, but I think that might just be like them projecting what they thought happened. But supposedly like one day they just came out and they were like, do not refer to me as a woman. I am very much not either male or female, and I am Public Universal Friend. And it's iconic. Like the first trender was not me; it was Public Universal Friend.
And like they chose a great name for themselves too. Like I'm
Literally,
real happy for them.
like yeah, I kind of want to do like a lot of research on them before I want to make a video about them. I think they're so interesting. Um, but wow, that's a big sidetrack. um yeah. Is there anything, what else did you want to kind of cover? Is there anything that we haven't?
Have we got into what you wanted to talk about re like creator responsibility and
Oh,
like
true.
our individual responsibility?
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about it a little bit, but yeah, let's get back to that. Let's talk about like what is the responsibility of the creator when it comes to making these reaction videos and the harassment that follows. Where is the creator responsible for that? Go.
Ah. um hmm. I think what's interesting is that I feel like I want to make a distinction between like call out culture and then like harassment, because I think a lot what people who were responding to me thought that they were doing, I think, is like calling me out. Like they perceived that
Yeah.
I did a harm and they were like, let me name that harm and like make this
Yeah.
known to the universe or whatever. And I think that like
It's
that
presented
is
as
a thing that,
criticism.
yeah. And I think that like uh I don't think that calling out creators on a public platform is necessarily like the most effective. Like I think we can be more effective when we have like individual one-on-one conversations, but that like there is a time when that is like necessary and important. I'll point to Cops Hate Mo's video about documenting everything about Calvin Guerra.
Yeah.
Like that's clearly an example of making a video about an individual, but doing it in a way where you're presenting facts,
Yeah.
not name calling, not attacking someone's identity. The person who is being discussed or like their actions, that individual is an adult. Like I think that like that is a situation where uh, maybe there are like some responses from that are undesirable that we wouldn't as creators want to see happen. I Calvin got doxxed, and like clearly that's not something that Mo wanted to happen, and like that we can't say Mo is responsible for, because
Yeah.
like Mo's behavior was not reflecting like promoting that behavior.
Yeah.
But I think that what is uh, something I would make a distinction between that, or like there's some fuzzy line in between, and I don't know exactly where it is, where maybe your intention is criticism, but what happens is you're attacking someone on more personal basis, and so your audience is going to then attack that person for a
Yeah.
personal basis and make the harm a lot more about the person in question and not their actions.
Yeah.
And then that is where I think we get into promoting things like this person is a problem, not their actions. Let's do anything we
Yeah.
can to like hurt this person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think like we mentioned earlier, I think it needs to involve like knowing the age of the person you're talking about, and like if you feel like you are very much so harmed by something, can you talk to that person first? Like,
Yeah.
are there other avenues? Like, I think that, like, you know, clearly, like, there's a lot of big creators who aren't accessible in that way. But I think that personally, if I feel like I've been harmed by a creator, I will do like every route I can. Not, let me rephrase. Because I think if like someone's like to kind of like, like in my experience of being harassed, like I'm not trying to have personal conversations with those folks. But if a YouTuber who I know I've talked to like in the DMs like makes a video and is like, I don't know, what's a hypothetical offensive opinion I can think of. Whatever. If someone says something that I think is harmful, I would try and have a conversation with the person first.
Yeah.
And I think like
yeah.
there's scenarios where we can do that and there's scenarios where we can't do that. So like this isn't like clear cut for sure.
I agree. I think that a lot of the responsibility falls on the creator for what their audience does, because as a creator, like, you cultivate a culture within your audience. Like, I like to put a lot of responsibility onto creators. A lot of creators will say, like, I can't control my audience. Yes, you can. You are the one that they are looking to. You are the one making videos for them. You are the one moderating the comment section. You are the one that is cultivating a audience that is either going to be reactionary because you're reactionary. They're going to be
Yeah.
reactionary and go to your videos. For example, if somebody makes a video specifically about you and calls you out and tells them exactly what videos are trash, right? And they are going to be so inclined to continue that harassment, and that is the responsibility of the creator because they set the stage for that. Something that is really frustrating about Calvin, for example, is like Calvin takes no responsibility for what his audience does when, like, Calvin is the one creating the audience. Calvin is the one creating the videos that radicalize his audience, that make his audience so angry, right? Because he's expressing that anger towards me, for example, or for any non-binary person that he makes a video about. Like, that's his responsibility. What his audience does in his name is his responsibility because that's the audience that he cultivated, right? My audience doesn't go and attack Calvin in the same way that his audience attacked me, because I made it very clear that, like, that's not the kind of audience that I want. I don't want an audience that's mean to the people that I hate. I don't want an audience that's, mean. I don't want an audience that's like unproductive and self-hating and stuff. Like, I really like the audience that I've cultivated, right? I like to think that my audience is very positive and nice, and I know about my audience because I have a Discord. I have I read my comments, I moderate my comments. I know what my audience is like, right? I have these live streams, and so I know that when there is a problem, when there is some issues, I can go in and kind of mediate that, right? And that's my responsibility as a creator, to, like, make sure that my audience is, or at least I'm presenting myself in a way that I want my audience to present themselves, right? So I am far less charitable to, like, these, YouTubers that harassed you and that made videos about you, because they are not stupid. They know that their audience is reactionary because they're reactionary, They know that if they put somebody on their video and make fun of them, that their audience is going to go do the same thing, right?
I think I have I feel like I agree with everything that you're saying. And at the same time, I feel like my channel is, like, kind of an exception because, like, I have the people who genuinely subscribe to me to, like, actually support me are, like, such wonderful people.
Yeah.
But I actually have, like, a really bad audience, like, for the most part. Like,
you have a hate audience.
Like, I hate audience. And so I feel like that's a scenario where, like, I haven't been able to control the actions of the people who subscribe to me.
Yeah, but you didn't create that audience. That audience was thrust upon you,
Yeah. Yeah, but I think maybe that's, like, a hard line to say of, like, how much do you encourage the behavior of people who follow you? I think because, like, there's audiences who are very loyal and who will, like, harass other people in the name of the person they're a fan of. Like, when I got harassment from Leafy is here, I got, like, just 1,000 comments that said KYS, hiss, and then snake emoji.
Yeah.
Which is, like, Leafy is here's, like, icon was, like, a snake or something. So, like, that's a reference to, like, they're clearly being like, I want to know that I hate you, and I hate you as a part of this fandom.
Yeah.
Like, if that is what you're building your fandom around, that's, like,
literally,
that's pretty obvious. Like
Calvin
that's, you should think that that's a problem.
Yeah, like, Calvin also had an emoji, right? Like, he said, he would even say, like, in live streams, he would say, like, if you're gonna go, tell these trans trenders what for, use this emoji, Like, you cannot remove yourself.
I didn't know he did that. That's, like, awful.
You can't remove yourself from your audience when you get caught, when you get called out. You can't remove yourself from your audience when you have literally openly cultivated a hateful environment, The Shift just sent a super chat, so I'd like to thank you. Oh no, I think Milo's frozen for a second. Wait, are you back now, Milo?
Am I?
I think you froze for a second, but
I'm
that's
here.
okay. You're back. Hello.
Oh,
The shift
okay.
said, "Thank you for your hard work on accountability and communication about why you won't find it necessary to talk about abusers. Makes perfect sense. Thank you. Thank you. We try." um,
Yeah. So like, sorry, did you, I don't know if you're still addressing chat or if I can like continue the
no, go ahead.
conversation we
No,
were
go ahead. Go
having.
ahead. Go ahead. I was just.
So like there's like the conversation about like what responsibility does a creator have to stop harassment? And then there's kind of the flip side to that of like how much uh benefit of the doubt or kindness in return do we owe the people who have like been harassing to us. And uh I know that I do everything that I can to prevent like harassment being directed at other folks. Like
Yeah.
um Ash gave me the language of like giving people an out.
Yeah.
That like uh of like talking about harm that was done, but doing it in a way that um, there's they have the option that like if they wanted to they could delete the video and it wouldn't be like tied back to them.
Yeah.
And that's like something that I tried to do uh, um, when it felt appropriate when I was making my video. That there were some creators that I intentionally like didn't name
Yeah.
because I felt like they weren't Nazis like Leafy is here. And so I was kind of like, oh, okay, you know what? I'll give you a chance, whatever. But like, uh, but that was the kindness that they didn't show me. Um, but
Yeah.
I'm like so afraid of also being called a hypocrite for like thinking that
Yeah.
like creators like are responsible for not sending harassment. So I have to be aware of like I
Yeah.
can't have harassment sent back to folks.
I think what's so unique about our experience is that we've been able to kind of understand, like, I don't know. I think that we are charitable to these people in a way that they were never charitable to us. Like, we try our best to give them the benefit of the doubt, give them an out, try to like patch things over when like how much like that doesn't like that's not our responsibility. Like they did the harm, right? And so like but we as, very empathetic and articulate and like thoughtful people, we don't want to just continue the cycle of hate back and forth reaction videos. We want to like be productive and move the conversation forward and give these creators an out, and so we aren't just contributing to the drama and the dogfight and the and the harassment, right? So like, but at the same time, like we have every right to not be charitable to these people who were not charitable to us, you know? And I think
Yeah,
that we're just at a really enlightened place in our lives where like we don't want to keep the drama going. We want to talk about our experience and move forward, and we want the people who
yeah,
caused this harm to apologize and move forward too, um
right.
we don't want to have a back and forth as much, right? um
Yeah, totally. Like I'm kind of glad that my video I mean like it's been very well received. People have been very kind to me, but it's also like hasn't necessarily gotten more views than my videos have been averaging in general. Like
yeah.
it's better performing than most of my recent videos, but it hasn't like blown up in any sense.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of glad that it hasn't because I want this to be. I don't necessarily want it to reach the mainstream audience where it could become like relevant enough that
Yeah.
the people I mentioned like could see it and then respond to it because uh, I don't want to deal with the responses to it.
Yeah. And we
I
don't
would hope
have
that I
to.
would have the self control to like not watch their videos. I'm bad at like I think I've watched like every video that's been uploaded about me. Like
I could
um
never. I'm
so actually like
I'm different in that. I don't watch them. I don't.
I wish I need to not. And I think going forward I won't. But I definitely like used to watch Calvin Guerra's videos like when I wanted to like feel angry.
That's
That
not
like I
healthy.
was actually I know it's really not. But like the day before Calvin Guerra posted the video about me, I was like watching his videos like the night before. And then like
Wow.
the next morning he uploads a video about me and I'm like
Wow. Wow. That's
actually
so
I mean I did I
I can't believe like what a what a time. what I
yeah.
what was that video that he made about you though? Like that was not that wasn't uh that the thing is like that could like I think a lot of the other videos made about you like kind of presented themselves as like criticism, right? But that was like
Yeah.
straight up bullying. Like that was just straight up bullying you. Like that was not cute. That was not a good look on anybody, you know?
Yeah.
Um
I think it was kind of funny in my mind that like I think Calvin Guerra and Blair White's problem with me is like I'm feminine and like I identify vocally as trans and also like have been
yeah.
medically transitioning. And so it's like funny that in that video, like at the very end, they realize I got top surgery. And like you can kind of see a little bit in their eye that they have like a problem with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming they didn't say anything. I don't want to like
I think that that's a fair
put words where
assumption.
they
I
weren't
think that's a
said.
fair assumption though. I think that they've made it pretty clear that they don't think that people who like experiment with gender roles or like present, you know, as non-binary or feminine or masculine when they identify as the opposite, like they've made it very clear over the years that like they do have a distaste for people for non-binary people seeking medical transition, right? um
Yeah.
and so like I think that's a fair assumption to make that they found out that you had top surgery and like didn't like it, right? But the thing
Yeah.
is like that's far more telling of them than you. Like I think that the reason that Calvin deleted that video was because there was no way to make that like a like there was no way to defend himself, right? Like that was just two bullies sitting down and bullying someone for
Yeah.
however long that video was. Like that
Yeah.
there was no way to argue that that was criticizing you. There was no way to make that to justify that video in any way. And
Mm.
like yeah, go ahead.
I'm kind of interested in this on the topic of like respectability politics
Yeah.
because like Blair White apologized to me once and she said that she apologized specifically for making a comment that like if I got dicked, I would realize I was a woman. That was a comment that she made about me and she apologized for in the DMs,
Wow.
saying that like when I started HRT, that changed her opinion on me. So I'm kind of like in her
Wow.
mind, like the more I physically transition, the more valid I am.
Yeah.
So like, I'm at the point where I don't care what people think about um, my transness in terms of its validity or whatever. And that's
Yeah.
why like, in general, I'm so at the point where I don't care and I'm going to go forward and not listen to any responses made about me.
I agree.
But I'm kind of like, now that I've had top surgery, there's a way that I could spin that to be like, see, I'm a real trans person,
Yeah.
whatever.
It's so
But I'm not,
tempting
yeah,
to, you know, yeah, like exact like I'm on testosterone, I'm seeking top surgery. Like it's so tempting to be like, you see now, like, am I valid now, Calvin? Like, am I valid now? But like that's not why I'm seeking transition. Like that's
right.
I'm not seeking transition. And some people have accused me of that I'm seeking transition because of everything that happened with Calvin, which is just there's no way for me to like that's just I hate that argument. Like, this is my life. Like, this is my personal life, right? Like, I didn't, like, how can you accuse someone of doing that to your body, like making that choice, like, to your body, like physically changing your body like irreversibly, like,
Yeah. I
to,
mean, quote unquote, irreversibly, because like
yeah,
it's not actually irreversible, but
yeah,
like,
I mean, like, top surgery, but like, um
I mean, just like my thing is like I'm making a video about this.
are you gonna make a video about irreversible?
Not the book,
Okay.
not the book, but about my upcoming video. I think I'm going to title it "Celebrating My Femininity Post Top Surgery,"
Mm.
and it's going to be about how like there is this impossible level of expectation for trans people before they transition of like being certain that that's what they want.
Yeah.
And like also there's this high level that is impossible to reach of having to prove that it's
Yeah.
something that you want, and like that happens in a medical setting,
Yeah.
but it also happens like online and
In
in
a social
self-policing and
setting,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah. So like the video is going to be like, hey, like there's nothing I can ever say that's going to convince everyone in the world that I'm actually trans or whatever. So like, here's a fuck you. Like, here's all the ways that like my top surgery experience was like non-traditional, and like, I don't know, like
Yeah.
there's kind of this question of like, I'm non-binary. What does it mean for me to get top surgery? Like, what is that affirming to me? Because
Yeah.
like I see my non-binary identity as like naming the fact that I am not a binary gender. Like I don't think that non-binary in the way that I experience it is a third gender. So I'm like, I'm not transitioning into something. I'm
Yeah.
just like, I like my body better this way. And then I'm kind of like, but then like the devil's advocate trolls are going to be like, well, but then is it just aesthetic to you? Like surgery has to mean something. I'm like,
There's no way,
but does it?
like there's no way to justify every aspect of a physical transition. Even like,
Yeah.
even when like you're like, or when you're binary trans, like, people are always going to want us to prove ourselves, and there's no way, like, there's no way that I can prove to every human
Yeah.
being that I am worthy of a transition. At the end of the day, the only people I have to prove it to is my surgeon and my insurance. Like, like,
Yeah.
um
Right.
so like, and that's hard enough already. Like,
Yeah.
what, like,
And like, yeah, right. Like the process is so difficult because for like clinicians and also trans people, like wanting to detransition is like a big personal failure. It's
mm-hmm.
like the most shameful experience you can have is like quote unquote changing your sex, like, and then realizing you were wrong and
Yeah.
having to go back. Like that is a that's understandable. Of like that's a stressful position to be in. Also, like I'm kind of just like, okay, so what if I didn't like top surgery? I would just get implants. You know what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. You
so
broke up.
what? Like,
Yeah. You broke up a little bit, but I get what you mean. Like, so, like, I feel like the lines are not as like black and white as people want them to be when it comes to surgery. Like, I think that or when it comes to physical transition in general, like, I think that even people who detransition aren't necessarily detransitioning because they don't identify as trans anymore. You know?
yeah,
Like, it's so,
I think, mm-hmm.
um I I don't know. I think that
Yeah,
I think that, like, why can't we just trust trans people? Like, just trust them with their bodies and their experience and their identity, because there's no proof, like, there's no physical proof, right, so all we have to do,
Yeah, there's no way definitively to prove that you're trans.
yeah, so like
Period.
all we can
Yeah.
do forever is trust people when they tell you who they are, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be more
Like what you
complicated than
say,
that.
how you describe yourself, that is your truth.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
also giving each other the courtesy to change and grow
Yeah.
and develop,
Yeah.
and like, because human beings grow and develop and change, and identity comes with that,
Yeah.
you know? Like, I think that we just need to give each other like so much more grace than we give each other, and so much
Oh
more
my God, yeah.
like, just so much
Just
like,
showing compassion to other people,
like
period.
give us a chance, right? Like,
Yeah.
um and you know, like, it'll make it easier for everybody, you know, like, it'll make it easier for Blair White, it'll make it easier for Calvin. I think that's a whole completely different thing that we can talk about, is that like, I know that like the way that I talk about identity is inclusive because it helps binary trans people too. Like, it helps,
Yeah.
like, we are set apart from like what Calvin did, or I'm set apart from what Calvin did to me, because like my activism includes Calvin, whether I like it or not. Creating a space where like queer people are accepted and trans people are have to advocate for themselves less and less, and have to defend themselves less and less, is helpful to Calvin too, whether he admits that or not, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I envision a society where Calvin doesn't have to hate himself as much as he claims to, right? um yeah.
Yeah. I think one argument that I've heard from binary trans people, or from some, like one person in particular, but who I'm not going to name because I feel like this experience is probably shared by several people, is um, the idea that some people do find a diagnosis validating, in the
Yeah.
sense of like they do think that it is affirming to their identity that like a cis person in a position of power like gives you the stamp of like,
Yeah.
yes, you're transsexual,
Yeah.
good job. And I don't want to take away from the fact that like that can feel validating, but what if we like so radically changed the way that we view identity in society that like you didn't need that for affirmation? Like what if every other part of your experiences was so affirming that you didn't need to be in that surveilled situation of like
Yeah.
having to prove yourself
Yeah.
to another human being just to like know that you experience your identity in the way you do experience it.
Yeah.
And
And
I
like,
don't know, like I think that's
how much more
sorry.
validating would it be if, instead of like, you know, worrying about a cis person telling you that you're valid enough to access medical care, wouldn't it be more validating if a cis person was like, yeah, we trust you, like, what do you need, you
Right.
know, like, how can
Yeah.
we help you, like with my experience with medical transition has been difficult right now, but one thing
Yeah.
that I am really really appreciative of is I've been going to the Los Angeles LGBT Center, and something that I've experienced with them is so encouraging, because I went into my appointment to get my top surgery approval letter. I won't like bore you with the details, but essentially, like, and I talked to this psych, or actually a licensed social worker. I said, like, I want to say all of the right things so that I can get access to this, and she was like, you're gonna get it, like, you're like, I'm gonna write this letter for you because you sought out this appointment, like, you sought out this appointment and you made this effort, and you've been going to the LGBT center for so long, like, I trust that you're trans enough, and I'm just gonna write exactly what insurance needs me to write for you, and like, you don't have
So
to defend yourself to
was
me.
it like a one-time appointment?
Yeah, so like,
Yeah.
I don't want to get like too into like the details, but like,
Yeah.
essentially, like,
That's your business. Yeah.
with the LGBT center, like, you know, they have these licensed social workers that write these letters for trans people, and they're really great about it. Like, they are very much like on your side, and they look at, you know, they look at you and they talk to you. They do talk to you about your identity and your pronouns and stuff like that, but for the most part, like, they know what you want, like, and they trust that as a 23-year-old adult, like, I know what I want to do with my body, and I know what I'm seeking, right? And they just do what they can as professionals to help me get to that point, which is what we want.
Right.
Like, it's what we want in, you know, for trans people in society. We want them to have, you know, cis people that are helping them along the way. We want cis people just to trust them and not have to, like, defend every aspect of their identity and explain for months and years that they are trans in order to access healthcare, right?
Yeah, right. Like, I think like my experience getting a top surgery letter was probably similar to yours, in that it was like a one-time appointment. I talked to a licensed social worker, I think, and a psychiatrist
Yeah.
or psychologist. I don't know. I wanted to talk to, like, I had a lot of questions. I was like, I want to understand, like, what does this do for insurance? So I was asking so many questions that the social worker was like, let me get my boss.
Yeah.
But like both people ended up signing my letter of recommendation. But like that the philosophy of that appointment and kind of like the like clinical approach that is both a part of informed consent and a part of the WPATH, World Professional Association for Transgender Health Standards of Care, which is different from informed consent and involves a longer process.
Yeah.
But both of those emphasize just like understanding or like making sure that a person's like other mental health issues are managed well enough that they are able to make the decision for themselves.
Yeah.
So like my appointment was screening for like depression symptoms, like anxiety, like hallucinations, like things like that.
Yeah.
And like that is like what the WPATH supports, but like through a longer process. But that's kind of like the argument that some trans medicalists have made is like, oh, well, you don't have dysphoria. It's like body dysmorphia or it's trauma or whatever, that they like seem like it's important to distinguish between these issues. And like personally, I've been in a lot of therapy because like we have other things going on in there, but like I'm managing those, and I've like been through a lot of therapy to make sure that I know what those things are. And I've never been to a gender therapist beyond this one-time appointment, and that upsets a lot of people. That like I haven't been through like months and months and months of like gender therapy, and like it isn't even that like I haven't had the opportunity, because like I've seen therapists at an LGBT center. I've had therapists who were queer and non-binary. Like I could have talked about my gender in therapy, but the thing is like it's always been something like I didn't want to figure out with like something to talk about with my friends and the people in my personal life. But I'm just kind of like, I don't even know what I would say in therapy. Like, you know, when I was making the decision to have top surgery, I'm like, I mean, it's just kind of like, you know, like you could try and pull out some like greater meaning about my identity and like suffering or something that's just kind of just like, what do I want my body to look like?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like to me, that's kind of like what it's down to.
And like, and I think like why, like, it's so frustrating because like you don't need to first of all, like, let us be clear, like, we're sharing this because like we want to talk about this like as a concept, right? And we're using our personal experience to, you know, talk about it in a larger like context. But the thing is, like, that's not Calvin Guerra's business. Like, that's not Blair White's, like, that's not, we're not professionals. We're not, you know, like, well, like, Kylie M, like, I do have
we're
a
like
bachelor's
professionals
degree
in our own experiences.
like I do have a bachelor, but like, you know, not to flex, but like,
but also like it shouldn't
degree.
take having a degree
Yeah.
to say,
But
like,
I can't,
I think,
like, I even with a degree, like I can't look at someone and be like, this is what you need, you know, this
Right.
is what you have.
Yeah.
Like,
But that's like what I think, at least the most radical parts of the trans depathologization movement are saying is that like clinicians aren't the experts on
yeah,
trans people's experiences. Trans
yeah,
people are the experts on
yeah.
trans people experiences.
It's all about like giving trans people as much bodily autonomy as possible, right? And trusting that trans people know what they need and know what they want, right? And the fact that like we, you know, would have to ever justify transness to anybody but our surgeon or our professionals is ludicrous. Like it's and let alone like having to justify it to other trans people. Like no, that's not an environment that we want to create for the trans community. That's not something that we need to dwell in. Like if a trans person wants to be a part of the trans community, let them, you know, like let them in, right? What's the point of excluding someone because they're not trans enough? Like what does that even mean? You know,
Yeah, it
like
has no concept. Like, yeah,
there's
it
no
doesn't
like
matter. It literally doesn't
it
matter.
literally doesn't matter. And also like, you know, this goes back to the idea that like online queer spaces are very different than like real world queer spaces. Like I like when you walk into like a gay bar, you know, for example, they're not gonna look you up and down and be like, you're not queer enough to be here, goodbye, you know, like that's not how it works, you know, like that's not how queer communities work.
Like maybe they should though, because straight people in the gay bar, I don't know how I feel about that.
Okay, that's a different thing. That's just a complete
All the fucking straight women in Boys Town. All right, calm down. Sorry, cancel me. I'm being sarcastic because I don't
um
actually.
but like you know, we're not there, there's no I think something that I tweeted recently is that like we don't have we already in our lives we have the burden of proof, right? When we go to fight for our identities in politics, in law, we have the burden of proof. When we get our medical transition care, we uh, you know, we have the burden of proof. Why would we give each other the burden of proof in the trans community? Like, why? We don't have to. There's no reason for that. There's no justification for requiring trans people to self-identify and prove their identity in any significant way, right? Like,
Yeah,
we're not
it's
the
like,
court of law. We're a community, you know? We're not.
and even like trying to understand this from a trans medicalist perspective, I'm like, that's what they think that medical professionals are supposed to do, is like
Yeah,
catching the fakers or whatever.
right.
So I'm like, if that's what the medical professionals are supposed to do, like, can you just leave it up to them?
Yeah, exactly. Like what like yeah, literally. And I think that's also like the bottom line too. Like none of these people who targeted us had any right to tell us who we were. And I think you said earlier in the stream, like, you really started to believe some of the stuff. Like, and I agree with that. Like, I started to believe, like, oh, maybe I'm not really trans. Like, maybe, you know, maybe I was being too much, you know. And it wasn't until, like, I went back and watched my videos that, like, I was never wrong, you know. I was never being too much. Like I would concede that I was annoying. Like
Oh, I mean, like, me too, but like,
like I would concede
that's not a crime.
like yeah, like I would concede that I'm loud and annoying and I said some annoying shit. But like I was never wrong. Like I was never wrong about myself. I was never wrong about, you know, like the community at large. Like I was talking about my personal experiences and I was trying to like make the community a better place. So we did not deserve what we got. We never did. We just never did.
Yeah.
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 That's something that I did have written down, actually, to talk about, like, our past selves. And, like, something that you said in your video hit me so, like, just hit me in the feels. Like, you said, I'm proud of that kid. You said that when you were talking about your past self. You said that you were proud of them. And I'm proud of past Brennan too. Like, I really that really resonated with me. I don't know. I think, like, people are so inclined to, like, you know, they want us to regret that part of ourselves, or they want us to, like, you know, condemn that part of ourselves because we got so much hate. Like, there's gotta be a reason, right? But I think that past Brennan and past Milo were doing the right thing that we thought was right at the time, and it was, you know, we were just being authentically ourselves.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, yeah, we were, like, young and annoying, but, like, that is not deserved of the harassment that we received.
Yeah. I think when I look back on my past self and, like, how I managed things, like, I mean, we had kind of opposite response, and I don't mean to say that, like, I am better because I responded the way that I did, but, like, because that's not true. Because, like, I subjected myself to more hate unnecessarily by, like, continuing to make videos. But, like, my response to hate was, like, let me make a video response to this person hating me, and just, like, be very passive aggressive towards them, and, like, be more aggressively non-binary.
Yeah.
Like, let me, like, double down on my opinions.
Yeah.
Which, like, isn't probably healthy, but, like, I was like, people were saying, like, the nasty shit about me online, and then I was like, okay, let me do what I'm doing, but more.
Yeah.
Yeah. That I'm just kind of like, I don't know how I did that. I'm like, I had, like, no one could stop me. And, like, someone probably should have. But, like, I just kept going.
That's so, like, the thing is, that's so inspirational. Like, I think what you did was really cool. I think
it was unhinged. No, is that, I'm trying to think of a word that's not ableist. I think everything I did was just illogical. Like, so, the way my coping mechanisms were illogical, but
yeah, I don't know. How do you respond? Like, how do you respond to that level of hate? There's no right answer to it. We shouldn't have had to, you know, at the end of the day. It was wrong. Mo said, being annoying doesn't give someone the right to bully and harass you. What people see as annoying is usually just ND traits anyway, and it is rooted in ableism. I agree. Like, I think that, you know, I think that, like, nothing we did was wrong. Like, I really don't think that anything we did was deserving of the level of harassment that we got, right? And, you know, it was to a point where you were just posting TikToks, like TikTok trends, no less. And Calvin and Blair bullied you. Like, it, like, we weren't.
I'm like, I know TikTok is cringy, but, like, we're all in this together, right?
Yeah. And,
like
we can, but, like, we can talk about, like, how cringe culture is, like, ableist in general, right? Like, and, like, usually targets ND people, and ND traits. And the thing is, like, at the end of the day, like, nobody deserves that kind of hate for just expressing who they are and what they like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like, what's wild is, like, I'm neurotypical. So, like, I'm like not even a part of, this demographic that, is actually systemically oppressed by like how their mannerisms are interpreted.
Yeah.
But like also so many of the responses to me um, were like, making fun of the fact of like the fact that I edited out when I was blinking, and so it doesn't look like I'm blinking. I don't know, like
It doesn't, like, the thing is, like, it doesn't even, like, we can kind of break down, like, the things that they criticized us for. But at the end of the day, like, they hated us. Like,
yeah,
they hated us. They hated what we said, what we did, what we looked like. And nothing we did or said could change that. You know? Like, no amount of reaction videos or response videos or clarification videos would be enough, you know? Because we weren't really like people that they were trying to reason with. We were people that they were using to spearhead a hate movement. Like,
yeah. I mean,
they
yeah,
wanted,
yeah,
yeah, like they, I think you said in your video, like they wanted to use you as an example so that anybody else that tried to be like you would see that and feel discouraged, right? And that's, you know, that's the idea. Make us disappear, scare us away, use us as examples, tear us down, and make us disappear, you know?
yeah.
Which is what, you
I think
know.
like
No, go ahead, go ahead. Sorry, I keep interrupting you.
no, I interrupted you.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. What were you gonna
Okay.
say?
I think like the way the internet works and like some of these response videos work is that people have like short memories online where like maybe they watched the video that Calvin Garrett made on you, or maybe they just saw the thumbnail, but then
Yeah.
they have like this image of you as being like someone he's upset about. And like his thumbnails also misrepresent people. Like I know the video that he made on Luxander, I think like in the thumbnail, he's like claiming that Luxander identifies as like a trans guy or something, right?
Yeah.
Like and if you only see that, that's what you remember. Uh,
Yeah.
to the that it gets to the point where like people are getting angry at like just this like vague idea they have of someone and like something they associate with that person, even if it's like really untruthful. Like the fact that like I want to.
What?
I was like trying to type in Calvin Garrett's name into YouTube while I was speaking, but I spelled it GAL. I was like combining his first and last names. I don't know.
You know how many like nicknames there are for Calvin Guerra? Like,
Which like I don't want to contribute personally, but I'm like, where's this? I know he like I mean, and he also like said you identify as a trans guy, which at
oh
the point
yeah.
you weren't
Yeah.
identifying, right?
What's so interesting is that I recently re-released or like unprivated the video that he reacted to, and so many people have commented like he cut out very specific things in that video that like that completely invalidated a lot of the points that he was making. And like, but that just speaks to, I think what you're getting at is like that they don't care about us. They don't care about like what our argument is. They want to spin a narrative of hate towards us, and they're going to do whatever they need to. They're going to edit whatever they need to. They're going to put whatever they need to in the thumbnail to create a narrative for us. And
Right.
you know, and that goes all the way back to our conversation about responsibility, is like you cannot say that you were like arguing with them in good faith or having like a critical discussion when you're actively misrepresenting them, you know, inflammatory to make your audience hate them more, you know. Like
Yeah.
you know, cutting out the part in the video where you said your pronouns, you know, just so he could say
Yeah.
that that you've never said what you want to be called. You know, you obviously did. You said multiple times, right? Like, there's a narrative.
Yeah, but like, and like, that's where some of the power dynamic of like having the difference between a large channel and a small channel comes in, because you know, if it's a larger channel that's like representing a video in a false way, that if that's a bigger channel, that's what the majority of people are going to see. Most people won't go and look at the video on the smaller person's channel, and so like they will believe however it's represented on this like larger platform. Which like doesn't really give small creators a chance to defend themselves.
And that's the
thing,
like
if people get away with it because like
because
I have a small channel, people wouldn't go back and check.
Literally, like, and that's another thing, like that's a power dynamic where like they specifically target creators that can't fight back, or that don't have an audience large enough to help them, right? And that's one of the reasons that I kind of just disappeared, because I knew that I couldn't combat it. Like I couldn't. And that's another way that they manipulate us and that they target us, right? And victimize us. Another thing like that Calvin said and still says to this day in his Taking Accountability video is that I was on an MTV documentary for trans men, when that documentary was literally titled "I'm Genderqueer." Like that, it was never about being a trans man. And but if people just follow Calvin, you know, and just follow his videos, they're gonna believe that I was in an MTV documentary about trans men. How dare I? You know, when that's not representative of reality at all. Like, that's probably like the one thing, if we can talk about like the one thing that I would say in response to that video is just clear that up, because like that's so just blatant a lie, like blatantly a lie from him, you know. A provable lie, like
so Google, like, it's MTV. I'm sure a lot of people saw that, right? Come on.
Like it's a lie. Like it's 100% a lie. The MTV episode I was on is True Life, I'm Genderqueer, and the other person wasn't even trans mask. The other person was trans femme. So like where did he get it? Like where?
Yeah, right.
You know, he made that up in his head to justify the hate that he felt towards me, and still feels towards me. And that falls back onto the responsibility of the creator. We spin narratives. We do it. You and I have a responsibility to present a narrative that is as close to the truth as humanly possible, and to present an argument with as much facts as possible. And, you know, but even then, we have an agenda, we have a narrative, and we have to be cognizant of that narrative, you know, and of the effect that we have on people. You know, people trust us, for better or for worse. And we have a responsibility to make that count. I mean, I think it's just very clear that we put a lot more thought into our videos than some folks who are making these like really false statements about other people on their channels. And I'm not going to say that like that's not something I've ever accidentally like misinterpreted someone's argument and represented it falsely, but then I correct myself. Which is something that like these people just don't do. Like they're never wrong, especially the people who like reacted to you. Like they are not going to admit wrongdoing in any significant way. They're just not, you know. That's not what they're making money off of. And they have the privilege to do that, you know. They have the audience that will accept that. I
don't know, kind of like to represent this point with my all white people are racist video. so the average view duration of that video on my channel is like less than a minute long.
Yeah.
So you just know that like it has most of the views, but a very small percentage of those views are people who watched it all the way through. And so most people are only watching it from other people's channels. And it creates like these false narratives because like no one's like directly uploading my video and like responding to every single point. You know, there's always some like selectivity about it, like which like makes sense, but like I think that's kind of a fault of the reaction format, is that you're not representing someone's entire argument, but you're claiming to.
It's really
and
misleading.
So it is misleading. That like Daz Black's video, his first one about me, where he's responding to the video about all white people are racist, he leaves out the point where I say like, I'm also a white person who is racist, like who has implicit racist biases. And so then like my comments are flooded with people being like, you're hypocritical because you're white, so you're racist too, huh? And I'm like, I said that in the video. But like you wouldn't know that because like Daz doesn't represent that.
Literally, yeah. Cause like it's so frustrating. And also like to know to like, I think with this is something else that's kind of related, is like it's so weird to like be empathetic towards these people. Like I guess like my, like, of course my experience is like I empathize with Calvin. Like I know where his anger comes from, and like I know where his hurt comes from, and like I know where his frustration comes from, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about him. And like I, you know, if he didn't hurt me so much, like I would feel really bad for him, you know? And so it's wild to me that like I can still, and I think that's kind of what sets us apart a little bit, is that like, you know, we still empathize with the people who harmed us. And, you know, I don't know, like, if you want to add to that or anything, but like, it's a weird feeling.
I mean, I think I do like really try to understand like what made people upset. And also like knowing that people don't think that they're being malicious most of the time. So I'm like, they're justifying this somehow. How are they justifying that? And I think for me, I guess in terms of like the gender aspect of it, where like a lot of the responses to me have been saying like, you're not really trans, whatever, you know, yada, yada, yada. Like my response to that has been like, okay, let me research like how this narrative that trans people are repeating was constructed in psychology, to like, actually, this is very deeply entrenched and like something that the trans community has been dealing with internally for decades. That I'm like, you know, if you're a young person online and you see channels like Calvin Garris, you might just think that it's, you know, a few young trans people who like picked up these ideas, but like, you know, it's really been the dominant narrative that a lot of people have been telling, and that you know, trans people in positions of power have been reiterating, like the W path. You know, the current one is kind of outdated. I think it's been out since like 2012 or something. The standards of care, but like the one before that, I think is where a lot of these ideas of like, you know, like the narrative that a lot of folks feel like makes a trans person valid, of like having never questioned, like they've just always known that they're trans, and like, you know, that whole that whole narrative, like that's been reiterated and constructed by a lot of these documents that were presented as fact, a lot of times written by trans people themselves, or like based on like research by cis psychologists on trans people. And I'm like, this has been presented as fact. And like, I can respect that Calvin Guerra very much so like values uh, having factual information about trans identities. I think I would disagree about like where factual information comes from, but like he does have this belief in like wanting to have like scientific proof for things, which
Yeah.
I don't think is like, I think it can, uh, you know, there's times when we don't need scientific proof, and I think we need to like also accept that.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, like that's an honest intellectual pursuit, sure, but like it's harmful because he's like then taking his understanding from that research and then using that to
And
police people's
projecting it on to
identities.
other,
Yeah, yeah,
I think like it's less, it's way easier to empathize with other trans people too. Like it's a lot harder to empathize with like just some of the people who attacked you were just straight up Nazis. Like we don't need to
yeah.
empathize with them.
Oh yeah,
They're bad
absolutely.
people. They're racist.
Yeah.
They're terrible people, and they don't deserve. I don't even like. I think that you were. If I had one criticism of your video, it would be that you were still too charitable. Like I think that you were still too nice. Like, because I feel like you could have just sat in front of the camera and like yelled. Like, and I would have been like.
You could have too. You could have too.
Like, but the fact that we were, you know, like articulate is just, you know, speaks to us as people and how we value like how we present ourselves online, and like and we don't want to like stoop to the level of the people who did just turn on a camera and yell at us, you know. But I think that like it is a lot easier to kind of empathize with Calvin and the trans people who targeted us, because like we are also trans. Like we also experience, you know, this a lot of like self-doubt, and also too like another thing that sets Calvin apart from like the people who targeted you is that Calvin was actually younger than me. Calvin was like a year, I think Calvin's a year or two younger than me. No excuse. I don't think that, I think when you're 17 years old or 18 years old, you know like what's mean and what's not mean. Like I'm not like excusing.
He left the video up like as an adult.
Yeah, and I'm not excusing, I'm not saying that what Calvin did was fine. Obviously that's not what I'm saying because of his age, but I just wanted to clarify that for a second. But also to put yourselves in the shoes of a very young trans person that has most of his transition been surrounded by cis people, right? That's an assumption that I'm making, but I would argue that like, you know, a lot of us spend most of our transition around cis people, especially when we're young. You know, you spend a lot of time having to defend your identity to cis people, and so you feel like that everybody else should also spend time defending their identities to cis people and justifying their identities to cis people. And so like there's so much analysis that I can do for Calvin that kind of, you know, allows me to make sense of his arguments. And I think that that's also allowed me to kind of heal and move forward and not be so, you know, angry and hateful back at him. But yeah, I mean, there are things though too that like make me really angry. Like one thing that I'm like that I'm thinking about more recently is like he made fun of me for my pink hair and then he dyed his hair pink.
I saw your TikTok about that.
He made fun of people for painting their nails and then he painted his nails. Like how like
But Brennan, he's a real trans person, so he can do that. Like, I'm being sarcastic. Oh my god, you're real.
Like exactly like it's so like messed up that I feel so deeply for him because of like the shit that he pulled, like the stuff that he did, and like but I don't know, I think that I would be a lot, if I was anybody else I might be a lot more angry or a lot more hateful. But I think I've sat with this for a really long time. I got a degree in being empathetic, which is what a social work degree is.
Low-key, me too.
And yeah, like I think that if I didn't empathize so much with him, like I would be a lot more hateful and a lot more frustrated and angry. But I don't know, what he did was really wrong, and what he continues to do is really wrong. But I only have so much control over it, right? We just have to move forward at some point.
Yeah. I mean, it's like anger is a justifiable emotion in this, in in our positions, because like, I mean, it's just like horrific, like what it's like to be on the receiving end of like that type of targeted harassment. And I think like I have spent a lot of time in my life being like very angry. But now I'm at a point where like I know that holding on to resentment isn't productive, and like we like, we can think that like being resentful is good because we think that like something will come out of it, which is like not the case. Like, whether or not I'm angry at Blair White or Calvin Guerra or Daz or Leafy or whoever isn't going to make them apologize, And like, they should apologize even if I'm not angry.
They need to do a lot of things, but like, I think at some point it's just not productive, and it's just not healthy for us, right? To kind of weigh our growth on what they do and what they continue to do, and I kind of knew that, like, going into my experience creating this video, I even discussed it like with my writer, like, what if Calvin responds, when he responds, how he responds, like, what is that gonna do for you or do for me? And like, I think I always anticipated what he did. What he did was, continue to double down and do some performative stuff, and never really truly like have some introspection and think deeply about the harm that he caused. And I didn't expect him to repost the video. That was a surprise.
Yeah.
But I think that did kind of throw me through a loop. But I think like, if I ever based my my growth on what he did, I would have never grown, Yeah. I like what you said about like living in the moment and accepting the present moment. And I wonder if you can expand on that a little bit. I think it's kind of related. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the central tenet of mindfulness is this idea that like the present moment is all that exists.
Yeah.
Like you can worry about the future, but like all that there ever will be is a present moment.
Yeah.
Like 3 months ago, you were living in the present. Currently, you are living in the present. 3 months from the future, you will be like, that is the present. That like, we spend a lot of time worrying about things that aren't in the future or that aren't in the present. And by doing that, we create psychological suffering by just like worrying about things that are out of our control.
Yeah.
And what being present allows you to do is you can realize what you are able to change in the present moment to like reduce your physical suffering, or like, accomplish tasks that you need to do in your daily life to survive. And that's kind of all you can do. And if there's something that you can't change, all you can do is accept it. Because if you don't accept it, then you're suffering over something that you cannot change. And so the suffering will not go away until you accept the fact that you can't change it. And like, that has just been important to me in realizing that, like, instead of living in regret about things that I've done in the past and thinking like, oh, I could have prevented this response that I got or anything, I'm just kind of like, in this present moment, like, what is hurting me? Like,
Yeah.
you know, like I'm fine. Like I lived through that. It sucked. You know, I did what I needed to do to get through it. But like in this present moment, like I have everything I need.
Yeah.
And if I don't have something I need, I will like go in, I'll go and
Yeah.
address
Yeah.
that.
There's only so
Like,
like there's only so much that's within our control that
yeah,
like we can, advocate for ourselves and push ourselves and like, control what we can control, but at the end of the day, like we can't change Calvin, we can't change the people who targeted you. We just have to move forward and recognize that like we survived it, right? Like
yeah,
and for better or for worse, like we're gonna keep doing content and we're gonna keep creating and putting ourselves out there in a way that we feel comfortable with, right?
yeah, yeah.
And I hope
I,
that all of you
yeah,
follow along on our journeys.
that is so beautifully put. Um, I'm wondering if that is a good way to wrap up this stream.
Yeah, yeah. So subscribe to us. um, Follow us. Do you have anything that you want to promote? Your video.
No, I mean,
Go watch the
you
video.
have my Twitter handle on screen.
Yes.
My YouTube channel is my name.
Yeah, I think I have your YouTube channel. Your YouTube channel is linked. All of our links are below. Um and yeah, if the chat wants maybe for like 15 more minutes we can talk directly to the chat. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if y'all have like questions, concerns, things you want to say, we're going to be looking at the chat for a little while. But yeah, I think somebody said, somebody asked if this is going to be available later. It is. It's not going to be available right after because I have to like go in and kind of edit it a little bit. But yeah, cut version is going to be available on my channel, and then a completely uncut version is going to be available on my Patreon if you want to donate on my Patreon. That's what I do with live streams is I put the full uncut version on my Patreon and the rest goes on my channel. And yeah. That's that. Art Cowboy said, just love y'all as creators. You both give me the inspiration to start my channel and be myself. Aww.
I love that.
That's so nice. I really want more people to like feel comfortable speaking their truth online. I think like if we can just build like a lovely small creator army, that would be great. That's my plan. Is to You're not laughing. This is a joke.
Oh, I could not read your tone in that moment.
I was saying like I would love to have like a small creator army of people to like combat the negative rhetoric. Never mind.
I mean, I support it metaphorically. I have a bachelor's degree in peace, so I'm not.
Milo was like, even the suggestion of an army is offensive to me. Okay,
clearly,
SJW.
I'm very offended right now. Sarcasm.
That's so funny. There should be a small creator army. Not an army. Let me rephrase. A community.
Union?
A union. A community. A community. Neopronouns are dope. Have fun with your gender. What do you think about neopronouns, Milo?
I guess kind of. I mean, yeah, their pronouns like I don't know why they should be controversial, but like a funny story attached to neopronouns is that oftentimes in classes in college, I took a couple of like women and gender studies classes, and there were a number of times where there were a lot of people who would use like she they pronouns or he they, but who I believe also identified as cis. And so like they were using they pronouns to, because they can, because like gender and pronouns aren't like attached to
Mutually
each other.
yeah.
I'm like, that's literally cool. Good for them. But also like, I had this saying where like I wanted people to know that I was trans when we were talking about gender, that I wanted to be like, this informs my experience. This informs how I understand like things academically. And so to signal to people that I am very trans without being like, hello, I am trans, I would like intentionally use neopronouns in like women and gender studies classes to be like, you got to go the extra mile.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I could probably do like a whole video about being trans in academia and like going through
Oh yeah.
like the social work major in the South as a trans person. But yeah, I think pronouns are not necessarily representative of gender. I think obviously they can be and um commonly are, but like I don't know. Like, I think neopronouns have definitely been blown out of proportion by people like Calvin. Like, it's really not as big a deal as people think it is. Like,
yeah. I guess like a personal thing that I struggle with is that I'm getting a master's in refugee and forced migration studies. And so I work in a lot of settings with people who English isn't their first language. And so then in that environment, I'm like, how do I, is it important to me that people gender me correctly? Are there like exceptions I can make? Like, is this a space where actually like I'm okay with he pronouns or something? And so it's kind of been like, yeah, in that setting, like I probably can't go by they necessarily. Yeah. And so like neopronouns are probably like thrown out the window of like, that's just, a space where like, I think, it's my response. I'll rephrase. I think it's like a space where my identity is not central because I'm helping someone who is like in a much more survivalist experience that I'm like, what matters isn't like how I'm showing up in this space.
Perceived.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Like, I also exist in the real world and in the professional world, and like I've worked with children, I've worked with people in hospital. Like I'm not gonna tell everybody to use am pronouns for me. Like, I think I'm gonna use am pronouns online because that's cool, but like I know that my parents are not gonna use it. Like, I think something too that like fails to be talked about is like, again, like real world queerness is gonna be a little bit different than online queerness, and like these people, like people who are using neopronouns are not necessarily using neopronouns in every aspect of their life.
Yeah,
and like,
for sure.
And nobody that I can see is like forcing anybody to use any particular, like it's so unnuanced to the way that people present like anti-neopronouns rhetoric when like it is so irrepresentative. Is that a word? Not representative
of, yeah, that's it.
of reality and like how neopronouns are used, like, and what spaces those pronouns are being used in. And then it's also mixed in with like what's like trolling and what's real, like, and at the end of the day, like neopronouns aren't the reason that anti-trans bills are being pushed,
right? Like most people and any average person who you pull off the street who like, even if they have some awareness of what trans identity is, they're probably not gonna know what neopronouns are.
They don't even know what non-binary is. Like that's the thing. Like, we're not. How can we be, the crux of the transgender movement, when all of these people creating anti-trans laws and like oppressing trans people don't even know about the discourse that we're having within the trans community. Like, I'm not I'm not the reason. Like, I
right.
like I'm just not, you know, and to
Yeah.
put that weight on other people is so damaging. It's just damaging.
Yeah.
It's not productive.
Right.
You know?
And I think it's needs to be emphasized that like people use different pronouns. I'm not going to generalize, but often people use different pronouns in different settings.
Yeah.
That like people are very I think not like most non-binary people are very understanding that like these like neopronouns are not something you will have like used before necessarily until you meet someone who knows, who uses them. And so like it's a new language to adjust to. And I think what puts people off from neopronouns is like the fear that someone will be angry if they don't get it. That like the person who uses neopronouns will get angry if they don't use neopronouns correctly. And I'm like, that's like so. I mean, like, yeah, non-binary people are humans and like we have emotions and sometimes get angry, but also like my parents have been misgendering me for 7 years and I just kind of go with it at this point.
Like something so like they act like we don't exist in the real world and they want to tell us what the real world is like. It's like we all like even the high schoolers and the 14-year-olds that are using they go to school. Like they know like like they,
like you get misgendered in your daily life if you were like out and non-binary, because like there's no way to pass as non-binary. Like so like it's just gonna happen.
And
like that's frustrating, and it's valid to be angry at that, and like we should change the world
but
so
we
that
shouldn't be expected to be any less ourselves because people will misgender us. Like, people misgender Calvin. Like, it happens.
Oh yeah.
Like it's not my fault. You know, it's not my fault that people misgender me. Like what can I do?
Like you're saying like if someone will like the point that respectability politics don't work, because you can be like quote unquote the perfect trans person, like very much so fit into like gender stereotypes and expectations, like someone like Calvin Guerra, who is like a trans man who is very masculine, who is physically transitioned, and you can still get misgendered. Probably only by people who like know he's trans. But like still like there's transphobes, and like you can't respectability politics yourself out of transphobia.
You can't. Like, and I think like, you know, like like we could go on and on about this. Like there's no way to like justify transness to somebody who hates trans people. Like the reason that these, you know, anti-trans bills are going into law like here and in the UK and stuff like that is not because non-binary people exist. It's because people hate trans people and they want us to disappear. And that's including, you know, Calvin and Blair. And like, you know, like using neopronouns is not going to change their mind. You know, it's not going to like help or hurt that cause. Like it's just like let people experience themselves and their lives without, you know, hindering them further. For what? Like I don't know. I just think I don't know why we were talking about neopronouns. Somebody mentioned it in the chat, I guess. Is there I'm like reading the chat now. Somebody said, you saying it's not my fault people misgender me just hit me in a positive way. I feel better. Yeah. Like, we can't get into everybody's heads, you know? Like, whatever we do, you know, it's not gonna... It's not our fault, you know? the way people perceive us is, we can't control that.
And like even factors that affect like how well someone passes.
Yeah.
Like I think Calvin, I don't want to just focus entirely on Calvin. I think a lot of people take the perspective that if you just put in the work, you can pass. And that's like, I think a lot of times false. I mean, like, I clearly don't try to dress masculinely. Okay. Well, first of all, I'm not a binary trans man. So, like, there's no way for me to pass. But people think that I should try to pass as a male. But, like, I don't want to dress masculine. So, like, you know, that's the effort. That's the thing that they think I'm not putting in effort. But, like, that's fake. But like also like I've had top surgery. I've been on testosterone for like 4 years.
Yeah.
And like I'm not microdosing. I have like a very high dosage of testosterone and my body just like does not want to like grow facial hair or anything, you know? Like I'm doing the things that you're quote unquote supposed to do for the most part, minus the fucking dress. But like
I like your dress. It's very pretty.
Thank you. Like it's just like you can put like you can do the things you're supposed to do and quote unquote supposed to do. Like you can transition medically and like still be read as a gender you don't want to be read as.
Literally.
And it's like it's just because people have like such ingrained ideas about what you know how you perceive gender, and I think that we can change that.
Yeah, I think that, and I think like what we're doing is like a lot more productive, is like having a more open idea of what gender identity is, welcoming in expression and experimentation and you know, radically changing gender, like what gender is, you know, defined as, right? Like I think that's a lot more helpful than just bashing neopronouns, you know?
Yeah.
Like why? And like
I just have like no consequence.
The concept of passing in general like is something that the trans community wants to move away from because it excludes so many people. And like for what? Like
and like I saw this in it was in Philosophy Tube's video about Jordan Peterson, where she was talking about like interacting with trans women who don't like pass as cis, but like she sees them fully and entirely as women, and that like she was saying, oh, it'd be funny if you did something like masculine, like fart, because like I see you as a woman. And I'm like, that's like such a thing. Like there's a difference between like passing and being read as cis and like trans people having like a different understanding of like we can perceive womanhood and we can perceive manhood without that being like cis manhood.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's possible to look at someone and like they don't pass as a cis woman, but you can like very clearly tell this is someone who is signaling they are a woman.
Yeah.
Like, and I think we can get to a place where like more people understand that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like that we need to move towards like an ideology that like being trans doesn't have like a start and an end. Like there's no like goal, there's no like ideal, this is what it means to be trans, like this is what it means to go through the transgender process. Like
the transgender process,
the transition, you know, like what does the transition look like? But and more so like transness is a very like individual experience, and like we've created a community out of this experience, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we are all the same, you know, and we shouldn't be, right? And we shouldn't be expected to be. Especially from people in our own community. That's it. That's all. Like
mic drop.
we just we just want to make the world a better place for trans people, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just let trans people live their lives.
Literally, like, it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Like, just like trust trans people when they say they want to use a certain pronoun, when they say who they are. Like, it's not hard to trust them. Like, and yeah, like, it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. It really doesn't. But yeah. Do either of you have any experience of feeling some dysphoria while medically transitioning? I I think that,
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
like, do you feel dysphoria even when you medically transition? Yeah.
Like, as in, like, can you medically transition and, like, does it cure your dysphoria or not? Is that, like, how you're understanding it?
That's how I'm understanding it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was like, the other way I would read that is, like, did your medical transition, like, cause dysphoria?
Ooh. That's interesting. That's an interesting
I'm not
question.
sure, Kev, if you're watching, I don't know for sure how you mean that question.
That's interesting, though. I think dysphoria is an interesting word. I have lots of feelings about that word.
Yeah, I think more and more I'm like, I think it serves a practical purpose to
Yeah.
say, like, I have experienced dysphoria in this way or that way or whatever, but, like, I don't really resonate with the word dysphoria.
Yeah.
Like, I think, like, part of my journey on, like, depathologization is realizing that this word, like, serves a purpose within a medical setting, but it doesn't serve me personally in the ways that I want it to.
Yeah. I think, like, I think the word dysphoria is a practical word that trans people use to describe one aspect of the trans experience. And it's definitely something that is used within the medical practice of transness in order to justify medical transition, right? But I don't necessarily feel like my experience with transness is, like, solely based in dysphoria. And I almost to a point where I hesitate to, like, talk about, like, what makes me dysphoric, what doesn't make me dysphoric, right? Because I don't know how productive that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, like, what doesn't work for me, aside from, like, wanting to resist, like, the medical clinical diagnosable way that it's used, is that like, gender dysphoria is naming, like, stress that you feel about part of your body or your appearance or how you're understood as, like, because of the fact that it conflicts with, like, your sense of gender. And, like,
Yeah.
my thing is, like, I don't know, like, I like, I didn't cut off my tits because I'm non-binary. I cut off my tits because I didn't want tits.
Yeah.
You know? But I'm kind of like, there are parts of my body that I didn't like, or I wanted to change or whatever, but I'm like, that doesn't have significance on my gender identity in my mind. Like, I like that my body feels androgynous now, like, that feels affirming.
Yeah.
But, like, when I think I did have dysphoria over my chest, but, like, it wasn't like, I didn't have a moment of, like, looking in the mirror and being like, I feel like I look like a woman and I hate it.
Yeah.
That's not something that I, like, really experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so,
I think, like, yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry, go
like,
ahead.
I think the person who asked the question, like, clarified that they're afraid of some of the effects of tea. And so I'm wondering if they do mean it in the sense of, like, getting dysphoria from transition.
Yeah.
And, like, there's, like, effects from tea that I don't like. Like, I don't like having ass hair, but, like, I like the things that I do like outweigh the things I don't like.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, I don't know. I think controversial, but I think I did not know with 100% certainty that I was going to love testosterone and that I was going to love top surgery until I got those things. And I think I needed to get them to
Yeah.
know that they were right for me. And I think like surgery has a lot of significance and is more expensive and a longer process and harder to reverse. But like I think you should think within yourself of like what you need to process or understand about
Yeah.
yourself before you go through with that. But like hormones are something that like you can start on a small dose and like get some of the first effects and see if it feels good for you.
Yeah.
And
I
then
agree.
like if you stop it like after a month or two, like it's not going to have done all that much to your body. Like,
Yeah. And you can like
if you're on a low dose, like you can take it very slowly and see if you like it.
yeah.
Hot takes.
Yeah, and also like I think Ash has a really great video. Ash Hardell has a great video on like not being sure about top surgery. And the thing is like there's so much pressure from cis society to like be 100% sure the entire time, because if you're not, then that's a way for them to creep in and kind of invalidate you and make you second guess yourself and what you want, right? But like it's so wild to me that someone would suggest that you can never have doubts about a extremely long, invasive, painful experience, like like traumatic almost, right? Like to think that it, like, honestly, controversial opinion here, I think if you don't have any single doubt about surgery, you're not ready for it. Like you don't know the
Mm.
implications of it, cuz like you have like you like it is scary. It's There's a lot of concerns. There's a lot of negative things that can happen. There's a lot of complications that can happen. So if you're 100% without a doubt not even thinking about the consequences, like maybe you should. Maybe you should think about the consequences. Um and I think like it's completely natural and okay to have doubts about a surgery for reasons that have nothing to do with your transness. Like I faint at the sight of my own blood. Like that's a concern I have, is that I won't be able to take care of myself, right? Like, you know, and that has nothing to do with, if I want it more or less. Um that's just my 2 cents on it. Like surgery is a big deal, and
Yeah.
if you think that you're invalid or some other trans person is invalid because they have doubts about it, like
I also want to acknowledge that like um, there's a lot of people who are dealing with very high levels of distress over like their chest pre-top surgery, that like you
yeah,
can have awareness of the medical risks that could happen from surgery and think that like it's worth it. Um,
yeah,
that like but I think that shows that you're at like a very a struggling place mentally, that like um, that like if you can be in a position where you're like, if there's a medical complication and like I die in surgery, it's okay because like I need top surgery.
yeah,
Like I understand that people like there are people who are in that position, but also like I think it's a healthy perspective, and I think it's reasonable to like be aware that surgeries have risk and you might not like the outcome.
yeah. I think like I think that I agree. Like I don't want to invalidate anybody that is like 100% sure. That's kind of not what I meant. But like I think
Sorry, yeah.
like I think that like I think that surgery is such a big deal, and to suggest that anybody um to suggest that you're not trans enough because you have doubts about a surgery, or to suggest that you're not worthy of a surgery because you have doubts or because you weren't sure about it for your entire life, like, is really, really, like, frustrating and sets back, like, this ideology that, like, we need to trust trans people when they're ready, like, and I think having doubts about surgery or physical transition is incredibly healthy and, like, really important to have a long, you know, think about it for yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to recognize the risks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And also too, like, at the end of the day, like, getting top surgery is really hard. Like, getting top surgery, getting, you know, even in some cases for some people, getting on testosterone is really hard. It takes a long time. And so, like, the suggestion of, like, TERFs and anti-trans people that, like, kids are going on hormones, and, like, trans people want to, you know, just walk into a surgeon's office and get top surgery, like, that doesn't happen. That's not the process. Like, that's not, like, how anything works. So, like, to suggest that people are doing this without some kind of oversight is kind of naive to
Mm-hmm.
the whole process.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. The like informed consent isn't just like handing out
Yeah.
medical care.
Yeah.
But also, like, to a large extent, like the expectation that you need to be sure about surgery is what limits people from actually like
Yeah.
exploring whether or not they want to transition in therapy.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if your therapist is less likely to give you a letter because you're not entirely certain, but you're like 60% certain, but you like want to talk it out in therapy, you're not going to feel like you might be less likely to feel like you can talk it out in therapy if that is going to risk your chances of getting top surgery.
Yeah.
So, like, if we let people make their own decisions instead of, um, you know, leaving it up to a psychologist, like, people could use therapy to actually explore those ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there needs to be a lot more space made up for trans people to transition in the way that they feel most comfortable, right? Where in an experience that centers the trans person rather than, like, the cis people's opinions on the trans person, right?
Yeah, right.
So, yeah. um do you have anything more to add?
I'm feeling like I might be about
I'm
ready to
getting
tap out
tired.
for the night. Yeah,
Yeah.
I need to pee.
Oh, me too. Okay, okay, we'll end it. Thank you all so much for everything. Thank you for watching. You're the best. Subscribe to both of us. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you, chat and viewers, and thanks for the space, Brennan.
You're welcome. Anytime. I'm gonna have you back, okay? We're gonna do this again.